too many pictures in pictures in pictures in pictures. Hello, everyone. Hope we're all doing lovely today. And there we go. Freaking out, man. Yo, guys, thank you for joining. What an exciting and pretty much unplanned show I have for you tonight. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and I thought it would be an interesting jumping off point to kind of talk about what's going on in Ukraine, how technology is being used either for the purposes of good or evil, essentially, and talk about kind of the evolution of cyber warfare and where we're at currently now, and why it's actually maybe important for us as a citizenry to have just the most basic understanding of how the critical infrastructure of the internet works, and that it is being maintained by competent individuals who are capable of keeping critical parts of it safe. What I think is incredibly evident from the situation that's going on in Russia and Ukraine is that there's quite the cyber warfare that is going on. We've seen a lot of websites getting hit on both sides, whether it's anonymous attacking Russian Ministry of Defense websites, other pieces of their internal infrastructure, or the opposite, whether the Russians were attacking Ukrainian Ministry of Defense websites or other pieces of infrastructure. And what it obviously highlights is an incredible dependency on technology, and how when that technology is disrupted on a good day, it's pretty fucked up. But in the context of a major conflict, it just becomes another lever in which potentially, either the global sort of economy can respond to and pull levers, or vice versa. So when I was thinking about... Sorry, I have to make a slight adjustment here because this is really annoying the shit out of me. There we go. So to start things off, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about one of the first pieces of legit sort of state-sponsored cyber warfare that we had. Hold on, bear with me for 1 second here. Wow, sorry, I'm pushing so many wrong buttons right now. So back in, I can't remember when this was. I think it was 2013. A very strange virus was found inside of a very interesting place, and it was actually the first recorded case, the first real case that we know of a state-sponsored cyber attack on another country. So this is the story of Stuxnet, and there's a video that I really like, and I think this may or may not be it. Let me just double check here. Hopefully blowing out people's ears. Yep, this is it.
In June last year, a computer virus called Stuxnet was discovered lurking in the databanks of power plants, traffic control systems, and factories around the world. 20 times more complex than any previous virus code, it had an array of capabilities. Among them, the ability to turn up the pressure inside nuclear reactors or switch off oil pipelines, and Stuxnet could tell the system operators everything was normal. Unlike most viruses, Stuxnet doesn't carry the usual forged security clearance that helps viruses burrow into systems. It actually had a real clearance, stolen from one of the most reputable computer technology companies in the world.
So for a little bit of context, we saw this exact same thing happen with the SolarWinds hack about a year ago. So hackers had infiltrated SolarWinds, which is a product that's used at a huge number of IT companies. Basically every IT department in every major financial institution, telecommunications company, defense contractors, they all use SolarWinds as part of their network infrastructure. And they actually got inside of the update server. So when people were getting updates from SolarWinds, not only were they getting an update file, it was getting like signed by their digital certificates. So they're like, oh, I can totally trust this because it's coming from straight from the vendor. This was very similar where they exploited, I believe, like a Realtek vulnerability.
It exploited security gaps that system creators are unaware of. These holes are known as 0 days, and the most successful viruses exploit them. The details of a 0 day can be sold on the black market for $100,000.
Or now more. Like, you can buy 0 days for possibly like millions of dollars, depending on what it is, what type of infrastructure it targets, etc., etc.
Stuxnet took advantage of 20 0 days. But once it got into a system, it didn't always activate. Buried deep in the Stuxnet code was a specific target. Without that target, the virus remained dormant. What was it looking to shut down? The centrifuges that spin nuclear material at Iran's enrichment facilities. Stuxnet was a weapon, the first to be made entirely out of code. The Washington-based Institute for Science and International Security says the virus may have shut down 1,000 centrifuges at Natanz, Iran's main enrichment facility, last year. In November, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog, said Iran had suspended work at its nuclear facilities without explaining why. Many observers credited Stuxnet. Last month, the Iranian government conceded the virus's infection of the Bashir nuclear facility, still under construction, meant that switching the plant on could lead to a national electricity blackout. Iran has responded to the attack with an open call for hackers to join the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and has reportedly amassed the second largest online army in the world. So who was behind Stuxnet? There's no evidence beyond rumor. Some have it that Israel is responsible because the virus code apparently contains references to the Hebrew Bible. Others believe the US was involved in the testing and development. The finger has even been pointed at Siemens mobile phone company, whose software is used by the Iranian regime. The most important question may not be who designed it, but who will redesign it. The evolution has been so fast that 9 months after its detection, the first virus that could crash power grids or destroy oil pipelines is available online for anyone to download and tinker with. You can watch people on YouTube pulling Stuxnet apart. It's an open source weapon. And there's no way of knowing who will use it.
Kind of.
Or what they will use it for.
To say that it's an open source weapon is kind of a bastardization of what, like, the spirit of open source, but like it's out in the wild, as they say. And so the types of like method delivery, like this thing was really sneaky. Like that was the very interesting thing about Stuxnet. It was an incredibly well engineered piece of software that was designed to be very, very, very sneaky. And we've also seen that in more recent cyber attacks, like the SolarWinds hack in particular. The agent that installed, I think this is like one of my first tech talks actually we did on this, was talking about like going through the white paper and seeing how not only did it install a piece of software, but it installed a piece of software that was specifically designed to like conceal itself and make sure that it couldn't be scanned by antivirus. There's a whole bunch of like really advanced capabilities that were put into it. So the challenge is that these viruses, these programs are becoming increasingly more and more ubiquitous, more effective. Last week we were talking about sense making with watching Daniel Schmachtenberger videos. You know, he made a really good point of, you know, the consequences of the choices we make, or the technical capacity that is at our fingertips greatly amplifies the impacts that we can make, especially online. And so what we're seeing is a start of kind of a new type of warfare that's not necessarily new to the scene, let's say, but it's definitely evolving, I think, in a way that we haven't necessarily seen, right? I can't remember, and I could be wrong here, but I can't remember the last global conflict I saw when, let's pull up the article, one of our OG, actually, I think if Ocelot's here, I gotta make you a mod at some point, because I need some muscle in here kicking people out occasionally, but where the hell was that? See if I can find this article. As always, guys, I'm super prepared. I love being incredibly prepared for this stuff. Damn it! Oh my god, it's probably buried somewhere in the general chat too, isn't it? Let me see if I can find it here. Sorry, guys. But what we're seeing is like so I think there was a article recently on how the Russian Defense Ministry had all of their phone numbers leaked out to the internet, and so people have just been picking up the phone and calling them. Here, I'll just Google it. Russian Defense Ministry hacked. Oh yeah, how do I make, let me see, how do we make Ocelot a mod? There's got to be a way to do this. Manage suspicious user, that's not it. Oh, hold on, I think I can do it through Chatterino. 1 second here. If we go, here we go. And some losses as a moderator. All right, sick. Welcome to the party. I think you can please don't abuse the power. Anyway, he turned me on to this article. It was one of these stories. Oh, this looks awful. Hold on. Oh, maybe actually this isn't too bad. Okay. So the anonymous collectivists hacked the Russian Defense Ministry and leaked the data of employees in response to the Ukrainian invasion. Hours after the anonymous collective called into action against Russia following illegitimate invasion of Ukraine, its members have taken down the website of the Russian propaganda station, RT News, and of the day, an attack against the servers of the Russian Defense Ministry. Now, what I will say about a lot of these stories is that they are hyperbolic to an extent. So when they say they have taken down the website of the Russian, they haven't taken it down, they disrupted it. Or they got in and they put something up for a minute and were able to, sort of put some Putin is bad banner on the website. But as far as I know, the websites are up. They're not necessarily completely taken down. At one of my previous employers, I remember the first time we got DDoSed. We actually had a legitimate DDoS attack, and there are tools that are available to network administrators. They can be sold to you either as an appliance that you put inside of your infrastructure. Appliance just means server. Or it's a service that your internet service provider gives you. So if you're getting DDoSed, you essentially have the ability to dial in the system and try and filter out all of that traffic. Also, if anyone doesn't know what a DDoS is, please feel free to let me know. So yeah, they didn't take the website down, but they definitely had an impact in terms of saying hey, fuck you. We can at least, poke at you and make your lives just a little bit more difficult. So, faced with this series of attacks Ukraine has been suffering for the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, we cannot help but support the Ukrainian people. People are dying, people are hurt, homeless people, anonymous, Tango Town, Op Russia. Russian government websites are offline. So, I mean, let's take a look. Are these websites actually offline? Oops. Watch it. Oh, maybe watch it be down. Watch it. Oh, maybe I'm just gonna eat my words here. Let's see. Okay, so these are all gov.ru sites. I wonder if they're also filtering traffic right now. Let's ooh, I can't do this. But what I can do is this. Oracle. So, guys, let's say You want to connect. You want to try and get to Russia. Let's see if we can get to Russia. There's a couple ways we could do this. The main one that we're going to use is a VPN through a virtual machine. Try and cover our tracks a little bit because, you know, it's Russia. I really don't need Russians coming after me at this point in my life. Although I think they're a little busy right now, if I'm not mistaken. So let's take a look here. It's going to log in with our default credentials. Okay, so in Das Linux, there is, I installed, sorry, NordVPN Connect. I don't want to connect to NordVPN. Okay. I guess I can just type this and it'll, yep, there you go. Okay. Shows list of countries where servers are available. So NordVPN countries. Do we have Russia on the list? Sorry, I can't read, but I don't see Russia. Do you guys see Russia? I think Russia's been taken off the fucking list. Okay, so how do we work around that? Are there any countries that are Russian adjacent? Okay, so what if we did... sorry. NordVPN disconnect. Nord... Sets configuration. Sorry, I just want to try and figure out how the fuck do you connect to pick your country. It's got to be... Connect C. Let's try Norway. Specified server does not exist. Okay. I am going to give up on this because this is stupid. Anyway, so I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it could, maybe I should eat my words. It could be very well be down, or it could also just be cut off from like the Canadian internet and we can't access it. Hard to tell. I could just boot up NordVPN on this computer, but it'll sever the connection to the show, which would not be fun for all of us. So anyway, so I thought this was like a really like interesting development in the sense that although it's sick to see like anonymous, you know, sort of taking the fight to Russia, it is also worrying when you think about being on the wrong side of that, right? On the wrong side of potential cyber attacks that can like cripple infrastructure. So one of the things, there's actually, I did have a couple of videos queued up here, but I fucked up my queue. Oops, sorry. This is a great video that kind of shows you just how vulnerable infrastructure in, well, in this particular example, America is. And anyway, I'm going to let the video speak for itself, and then I'll get into my comments and stuff. I don't think we need to watch the whole thing, but...
The lights on. The door was just open.
Basically anything that could ruin a company, we try to access.
So we're about to hit up a power substation. It's surrounded by a barbed wire fence.
We will get in. There's no doubt about it.
I'm in the building.
Server room.
We're not seeing cameras. I think the surveillance sign is a lie. It's kind of creepy. Yeah.
Oh, it is. The site's up.
We are the attacker team.
Site's
We are
up.
Offensive security. Our goal is to achieve full access.
What
Only
a
extremely
shithole of a website. Sorry, Russia. That's a shitty website.
The wonderful thing about all of this is it's perfectly legal. We like to bring in a mix of people with different technical skills.
We're going to pretend like we work here. My specialties, if you will, really involves social engineering.
Now what I'm doing is I'm going to download some malicious scripts. Background mainly in application pen testing.
Given a determined enough attacker, it doesn't stand a chance. I come from the military, specifically the Army, as a paratrooper and a medic.
I originally practiced doing this stuff at home. Penetration tester, usually focus more on the network side of things.
You need to have the ability to kind of think outside the box, then you can start to hack stuff. So we're currently on our way to the first office location where we'll be basically conducting reconnaissance just to see what the area looks like, where we're going to gain access, what things we need to be aware of. We're sort of close. There's the offices. Anytime you're going to break into a building, you have to be aware of people. You have to be aware of the security controls that they have in place. A reconnaissance is going to help us figure some of that out. Target will be on the left. And this is the employee parking.
I got something good to show you guys.
Not a fence along
I
the
got some
wooded
good
area.
shit.
Drive casual. The goal is going to be look at different approaches. Over here is all
Right,
the
yeah.
neighborhood. And this
Dude, pen testing is such a cool job. Like, I've part of me has wanted to get into it, but it's also a sketchy world.
This is wooded, but there's no fence here. Look for cameras. Try to get a sense of when people are going to be there.
Office. A bunch of cameras out on this side.
What the surrounding area looks like. Are there neighbors who are going to see what we're doing who might call the authorities? We've got residents, so if anybody sees us, we've got a problem. It looks fairly accessible. It'd be fairly simple to have somebody enter from the wooded area or simply just drive up into the employee parking lot like you belong and just walk up to the door. Assuming there's not anybody inside, we should...
I will say, guys, this works more often than you would think. Like, if you're ever trying to gain, let's say backstage access to a show, just walk in like you belong there. Like, walk into the back of a kitchen or something, or get access. And like, again, if you kind of look like walk with purpose, often people just won't get in your way. It's crazy.
Rain at place.
So, interesting note about social engineering. I have this book called Secrets of a Super Hacker by Nightmare, and it was written in like the very early 90s. Yeah, it was probably like 91, 92. This is before the advent of even like Windows 95. And although all of the technology in the book is obviously incredibly outdated, the principles are identical. And one of the things they talk about it is social engineering and how that is typically the easiest way to gain access. So, in my organization, we often do social engineer tests on our employees to see how susceptible they are potentially to getting, whether it's a phishing attack or whether it's actually like a legit social engineering attack, to test their competence. It's quite interesting.
Social engineering is also referred to.
Oh my goodness! So actually, yeah. So I'm gonna you're gonna love this. And if you've seen this video, stop me. To be hacked. Where is it here? Vice hack. DEF CON, I should have said. Here it is.
DEF CON is the biggest hacker convention of the year. It's place where thousands of hackers come to hear talks, to demonstrate their newest hacks. It's actually a place that's so dangerous to be on the internet that they tell you to turn off the Wi-Fi.
Like, if I went to DEF CON, I would not bring a phone that, like, any of my shit is on or I'm signed any of my accounts. It is literally the worst place to bring anything that you wouldn't want to get, like, compromised or scanned or fucked with. So, Coco, you're going to love this. Whenever we did security training for new employees, so for a little while we had a really awesome onboarding program that, like, every Monday is when new hires started. We usually have like 5 or 6 new people every Monday. We would bring their laptops in the room, hand them out, get them to sign in, and then we would, you know, tell them like about the tools, all the things that they had to use. Oh yeah, people are always the weak link. It's hilarious. We would literally, I would tell them about this example or show them this video if I had a room with a video screen that I could use, because it is incredibly illustrative of how hacking has just as much to do with how you think about a problem or your ability to manipulate a particular situation or system than it does having a really strong grasp over a particular technology. Those are tools that will definitely, like, accelerate or amplify or improve your ability to gain access to things, but I mean, you could also just phish someone's credentials and get access to their systems through that. So this is a phenomenal and one of my favorite illustrative examples of how you can just get absolutely owned. It's great.
On your
so
phone, and they tell you not to use the ATMs too, because those could be hacked as well. This is the DEF CON ballroom. This is sort of the main room where things are happening, and it's pretty wild. I think this is car hacking village. This car's locked. Can you get me in?
I'll unlock it for you. Should be good.
Hacking is no longer like this fringe activity, and if you are at DEF CON, there's a good chance that you're here because you want to learn what could happen to you or your company.
Anyone here first time in the SCCTF? Holy crap.
I invited Chris to hack me with his team, but they're gonna hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
So I'm pretty sure at DEF CON, they do these amazing exercises, and I wonder if we could find it and actually watch it later. But they put this person in like a soundproof box, and they mic everything up, and they watch that person like live as a challenge, try and social engineer. And I can't remember what the guy got, but this guy, like, majorly fucked Walmart. Like, he got some Walmart DEF CON hack. Oh, yeah, here it is. Oh, it's that same dude that was just there, and like, I mean, it's not the dude in the glass, it's the same fucking guy in the social engineering. So yeah, a Walmart store manager in a small military town in Canada got an urgent phone call last night from this guy. Told the manager, a multi-million-dollar opportunity to win a major government contract. He was assigned to visit the handful of Walmart stores picked as likely pilot spots. And he did a complete picture of the store's operations. Wow. Okay. Please tell me we can watch this. This has to be it. What's this guy's name? Let's see if Gary Darnell shows up on YouTube here. Gary Darnell. Walmart hack. Damn. Okay. Anyway. I'll let them keep going here while I look for it.
We help people with human security issues by testing vulnerabilities for like a network test, but it's for the people network. We test those vulnerabilities, see where the holes are, and then help people learn so they can patch them.
Can we try some of this? Can we try some?
Yeah.
See if it works.
Yeah, we probably could have our star visher here make some phone calls.
This is great. By the way.
Sure. Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
And this has happened to me. We once got, we were being tested. We had a penetration tester call and be like, hey, I need to get my account reset. And he was super frustrated and like something didn't add up. And so I straight up like denied the guy. I'm like, you're going to have to call someone who works here to like tell me that you are who you say you are before we're even going to finish this conversation.
Let's do it. Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider
Okay.
and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna spoof from your number, so it's gonna look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log into the
This is
account.
so
The baby's
good.
crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds.
Look at his
that's
face.
my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Shh. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account. Okay, my
Jessica uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
So if you're like, why, first of all, this is fucking awesome. But second of all, if you're like, okay, well, why would someone want to gain access to my phone other than being able to maybe get access to your records or add themselves as an account? This is actually a big problem for IT organizations who their executive teams having their SIM cards swapped out. So what happens is an attacker will call and say, yeah, I'm the executive assistant for so-and-so. I really need them to, so two-factor authentication, right? So what they do is they hijack the SIM. So they call in, they say, oh, yep, no, my leader, here's the SIM card. They put the service over, they log in, they TFA, they get the thing. And typically those are almost always like targeted attacks. Those are literally, and again, I can speak to very, like several one-on-one experiences with executives being selected and attacked by social engineers because of their weak security, and they use that. So I'll give you a great example of something these motherfuckers did to someone in our organization at a previous company, and I won't say what department, but we essentially had one of our higher ups came over and said, there's something really weird going on with my email. I don't know what's happening, but like something's up. Can you take a look? So we go into his inbox, and at first I don't really notice anything, and then all of a sudden like something flashes up on his Outlook and disappears before I can see it. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then it happens again. It's a couple seconds later. I'm like, it looks like messages are like coming in but disappearing. Anyway, so what had happened was someone got access to his inbox and had used his distribution list to send out emails to all of these people saying, I need you to please, do whatever it is that I want you to do. I can't really get into specifics here, but I want you to do this thing, okay? And the hackers had set up rules in his Outlook. So first off, it went out to everyone on his distribution list. If you've ever sent a mass email to any corporate environment, one of the things you will almost always get back is an out of office or even a bounce. There was an email rule that said if any emails with this subject bounce or come back, immediately put them to trash. Just hide them, right? So when he sent out all these emails and all these bounces came in, he didn't even see them. And then as people were replying to that subject line, the email replies were getting moved into deleted. So it was literally hiding everything and moving all the emails around when he couldn't see it. But they were using that as a vector to attack other employees and try and get information and get access to systems. It was incredibly, let's just put it this way, it was very effective. It was an incredibly effective hack, and it's absolutely terrifying. Like that, yeah. Again, when they want in, they're gonna get in.
Shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yes.
I really thought that my cell phone company would protect me. I mean, like, this is the most basic stuff, and they're not doing it. And if they're not doing it, you know all these other businesses aren't doing it either. Anyone with a phone and an internet connection can do social engineering. But I was curious, what can a hacker with serious coding skills do?
Well, DEF CON is the world's biggest hacking convention. It's hacking everything, hacking social, hacking hardware, hacking software, hacking various systems.
I asked Dan Tentler, a well-known security researcher, to turn all of his firepower on me.
I did get into quite a number of things that I found.
So what were the first things you did? How did you start hacking me?
I quickly found your Squarespace blog, and
this is
had an
awesome,
idea.
by the way.
Basically, what I did was created a bogus Squarespace site and sent an email to you, fish asking.
It wasn't sales, but you're like not that far off. Like it's a similar type of
website,
unit of the business.
And I did it because I'm an idiot.
So once you ran that, it gave me access to your computer. And
Remember, I don't know if you guys were around for a previous episode, but we showed how easy it is to build malicious payloads. There are literally like little applications inside of programs like Kali Linux where you can do social engineering toolkit. You can quickly and easily whip up either an infected USB drive, so you can put a key that you put in the computer. It will write to that key. And what a lot of these guys do, and this happens all the time, is they'll go out to parking lots near the office that they want to get in, and they'll just like throw USB keys around cars and see who picks them up, plugs them in, and then boom, that computer's compromised if they don't have very rigorous controls on the actual laptop hardware. So a lot of modern organizations who are very serious about security, they will make it impossible for you to use like any USB key. You'll plug it in, the computer will just, nope, I'm not even reading it. And in this day and age, that's probably a good thing. So
I created several fake pop-ups that looked like system pop-ups that would ask you for your credentials.
You didn't even have to have my passwords.
No, you gave them to me.
I gave them to you.
Yeah. So I stole your 1Password keychain.
And 1Password is where I store all my other passwords. So effectively by...
And your social security number and your Amex stuff and all your stock trading and bank information. I can send email to everyone in this room as you. I am you right now, if I wanted to be. If my evilness is working correctly, it should actually be taking pictures of your desktop and pictures through your webcam every 2 minutes. And I have been watching you for about 2 days now. In coffee shops at your mom's
Imagine you say there's like, I have been jerking off so furiously to some weird porn. Like, this guy for sure knows something about me that I don't want people to know.
On a plane.
Look at his face.
Editing stuff. Or is you, like,
oh my god, so this is literally...
Every 2 minutes.
Through my webcam.
Yeah, through this guy.
How badly could you have messed up my life?
I could have made you homeless. I could have made you homeless and penniless.
How?
Like,
How would you make me homeless?
Like, I have control of your digital life in its entirety. I have all your credentials, I have all your access to all your financial information, all your work information, all your personal information. I can pay people with your bank account or your Amex account. I am you.
So like he could buy like illegal, he could transact with people that would make him look really bad. You know, he could buy all kinds of weird products. He could email people and say a bunch of weird shit. And he could use like potentially like his webcam to blackmail him. And sexual exploitation on the internet is actually a huge problem and incredibly underreported. A friend of ours told a great story once of this person that he knew. And essentially they had bought a computer secondhand from some computer store. It was like a Mac of some kind. And they had noticed that it wasn't necessarily acting normal. There was times when it would glitch out or do something particularly weird. And they were watching television. And there was a story or something about, like they saw a story about someone watching them through their webcam, and they're like, oh my God, like, I wonder if that's happening to me. So this person went to her computer and went to go put a sticky note over the webcam. And as she is doing this, a voice comes out of her speakers and goes, don't do that. Okay. Imagine that. Imagine that you're like about to do that and there's someone watching you and talking to you through the fucking camera. That is truly terrifying. So I always say, guys, be careful what you do in front of webcams and microphones that are not unplugged or secure. That is, if you don't want anyone listening or seeing it.
I can fully impersonate. Like, the only thing I couldn't doctor would be like your fingerprints.
This is like as bad as it gets.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's bad.
So it turns out that Dan Tentler is very good at his job. I mean, he hacked the hell out of me. He got everything. I mean, frankly, I want to take my computer and throw it into the deepest part of the ocean, and I want to become a hermit, and I want to never touch a piece of technology again, because holy shit, that was everything. That was the keys to my entire life.
And that wasn't a lot, right? That was just getting access to his one computer, let alone getting access to his phone, let alone getting access to like work machines or anything else. Like, there's so many other ways you could fuck up someone's life, right? It's absolutely wild. So we're going to watch a really fun video really quickly while I queue up some other content here to kind of keep us on track with the sort of the weaponization of these tools and how they're being used between nation states. But before we do that, we're going to watch something fun, which is this great talk by this guy at DEF CON. This is back in 2010, so it's a little old. But it's a wonderful story about someone who essentially stole his computer and what happened there. So we're going to watch this for a second.
All right. I have it on no less of an authority of speaking at DEF CON than Jason Scott here, that everyone is really confused about what room they're supposed to be in, and talks should start like a few minutes late. So to fill in some time before I get started, I thought I'd just tell you a little story about my other experience with computers and the police, which was soon after I got to MIT. You know, you get to MIT and there's this whole kind of pulling hacks ethic, right? Like doing these pranks to amuse people. And so, you know, you start immediately looking for things to do. And I noticed outside my lab across the street, there was a manhole that had been opened, and there were some lights in it and some power cables dangling in it, like extension cords. And it sat there like that for weeks. And, you know, what the hell's going on? There wasn't even like cones around the manhole to stop people from falling in. It just sat there, and we were just like, well, we don't know what's going on here, but maybe we should turn it into a hack. So we got an old VT220 terminal and decided we would set it up on the edge of the manhole with a lamp, as though some hacker had like popped out of the manhole and was up to no good with their VT220, hacking, you know, whatever was in the manhole.
I'm going to skip this.
So second lesson, recordings, audio, video. Click the eyesight and they've retrieved a picture of the person using it, and they've got the "Where's my iPhone" feature and stuff like that. But this is not a mobile piece of equipment. It doesn't have a camera in it, so the situation was a little bit more complicated.
Sorry, he's talking about how his desktop was stolen from his house.
And the circumstances of the theft, I just have to confess what happened. It was a straightforward physical security fail. My place is on the second floor. There are 3 locks between. I rate everything in terms of zombie defense. So my keys are coded in terms of danger of zombie access. So the green key is the outside, the yellow key is the second floor, and then the red key is my room.
This guy's such a nerd, and I love it. It's so good.
But unfortunately, we're not dealing with zombies in this case. They climbed through a second floor window via an access method that I hadn't noticed, and then busted the red lock. So just had to bypass one door. It's the kind of thing where this whole situation could have been prevented with a $20 deadbolt. So that's worth keeping in mind. But the upshot of it was my Macintosh, which was a Quicksilver G4, my pride and joy, was now gone.
Poor guy.
I'm the kind of person that keeps religious daily backups. In fact, I kept religious daily redundant backups. Unfortunately, both of those were stored in the same room as the server and were also stolen.
So one thing I tell people is if you are actually really serious about backups and making sure that you have like a redundant copy of stuff, get yourself a NAS. Get yourself a little network attached storage. Find a best friend, someone who you trust very well. Get them to get a NAS as well. And you can set up something called async, which allows you to do remote backups. So essentially, if you and your friend have a really good agreement that says, hey, I'm going to give you half of the storage space on my NAS, you could have half the storage space on yours, you could essentially create off-site backups. So all of your shit is constantly being written to a hard drive that's not in your building, and if someone ever comes in and steals all your shit, your data is safe at your friend's house. Although you have to really trust that friend. I mean, you can still encrypt the data so that they could never actually get into it, but at the end of the day, you have to trust them to maintain it and make sure that nothing ever happens to the actual drive if you really need it.
Lesson, off-site backups. These days, I dumped everything onto a portable hard disk and gave it to my parents in Australia and said, I hope I never need to ask you for this back, but I might one day. Very, very traumatic to me. I lost all my music, all my photos, all my video projects.
Oh, someone said all your porn.
So I had to channel that energy into trying to find my machine. I get very angry without my heavy metal. So what I did have was the serial number of the machine and the stats of what machine it was. And so I started to look for it in the kind of usual places you would think someone would dispose of a machine. So I started searching eBay and Craigslist for months, and I didn't find it. Fuck. Now, someone asked me almost immediately when it got stolen, if it gets plugged back into the network, will you be able to find it again? And I thought, yes! I'm running a Dyn DNS updater. It'll update the domain record and I'll see it again. And then I thought about that a bit more, and I thought, well, the machine is set to auto-boot into single-user mode. Okay, so my data security policy at that time could definitely have used work. And I thought, well, the guy can boot into it, but it's not going to get back on the network because I'm pretty sure the network settings are locked, and it's on an intranet, so the thief is not going to be easily able to reconnect it to the network unless they happen to have an intranet with the same settings as I did. Unlikely. So, fuck. So even with my legendary stubbornness, I eventually gave up looking for the machine on sale sites and trying to get people to go to... I was in San Francisco filming Prototype This at the time, so I'm trying to get people in Boston to go to flea markets for me and look for it, and they're telling me to fuck off, as you would expect. So, all right, time passes. Now, if you use Dyn DNS and you use the automatic updating service, if you don't update it for a while, you start to get messages like this, which say you have your account looks inactive. So you can either just let your account be deleted, or you can click on this link and reactivate it. So I would click on these links once a month because I felt like, why set it up again if I start using it again? And at some point, I noticed something, and I thought, that's funny. I don't remember getting one of those emails in a while. I wonder what's up with that. So I'll log into Dyn DNS and see. And there I see, holy shit, 2 years later, that domain record has started to be updated. What the fuck? So quickly, NS look up the IP, and pretty interesting. My machine that was...
The resolution on this is so poor because it's from 2010. You can barely see this. I think I would have to, make it even still very difficult
Boston
to
now
read.
Seems to be on a Cox.net dial-up in Las Vegas. So I call the cops right away, and they say, oh yeah, we'll subpoena that IP record. And I said, well, you got to make sure that you get a historical record for this, because this is a dial-up dynamic IP. It's going to change a lot. It's going to be totally worthless if you look it up now, and it's not assigned to anyone, or it's assigned to someone different. And sure enough, they came back a month later with their subpoena results that said that IP address isn't registered to anyone. No shit. I wasn't staying idle in the meantime, waiting for them. First thing I did, of course, was ping it and see if it was up, but it wasn't. So you know, it's a dial-up. It's not always online. So let's do that thing a whole shitload all the time and wait for it to come back. And sooner or later, it did come back. Let's see if we can still SSH into that box. Fuck yeah. So SSH is not the only service I was running on that machine. I'm also running VNC, so let's see if that's still up. So my machine, I can still SSH to it, I can still VNC to it. The machine has not been reformatted or locked down, but he did at least go to the trouble of changing my desktop background. I'll give him that. Now this is a Macintosh, so we can enter things on the command line that make it do things. Like text-to-speech that comes out of the built-in speaker with no apparent window or source. I am gonna get you, motherfucker.
That's pretty cool.
But childish fun aside, I want that machine back. So let's start taking a look to see what we can find out about the guy that has it. So he hasn't changed the names of my hard disks. There are some PDFs on the desktop. They look like forms for unemployment benefits in Nevada. It turns out they are unemployment forms in Nevada, but they're not filled in electronically. They've just been downloaded and probably printed out, so that's a dead end. But we have some stuff that are JPEGs. Maybe they're interesting pictures. Let's take a look.
This is great. Oh, wow. Oh.
So now, either whoever has this computer is really into saving photos from diamond-earring-wearing-douchebags.com, or these are pretty hilarious self-portraits.
Nice.
So let's find out a little bit more about what this guy's into. Let's take a look at his browser cookie file.
Uh-oh.
So here's an excerpt. So here are some sites. We got blackfatbooty.com, bigbuttbrazilianmoms.com, freebigassporn.com, elephantasses.com.
Man likes his butts.
All right.
Okay, fair enough.
What about some searches? All right, we got sexy, beautiful, fat ass. Got several searches for free porn.
This is so good.
Not something I thought that was that difficult to find, all right, but we're getting a psychological profile.
This is great. This is really
great. Now, I know some of you out there, right? You're thinking, this is my machine, these are my cookies. Right? Now, I swear to you that they're not. You're just going to have to take my word for that.
He has better taste than that, maybe? I don't know.
We got some location information in these cookies. Oh, you want an answer to that? I'll give you the same answer I gave at my DEF CON talk 2 years ago. ASCII goatsy. Yeah, so location information in the cookies, but nothing we didn't know. It's all Las Vegas. But a little bit deeper here, we find Gmail address. Nice. Thank you, Google, for keeping that stuff very easy to find. So what do we got? We got location in Las Vegas. We got a name. We got a face. We got a Gmail account. And we got a keylogger installed.
It's over. He's done. It's over. It's over. Game over.
So at this point, I got sweaty palms. I'm like, oh, can't wait for this machine to come back online because it goes offline typically 8 or 10 hours after it comes online. So waiting to get that first keylog back, and here's some of the initial keylog stuff. So right away we have a street name, but not a street number. Could be his, might not be. We got one login and password. But we don't really have a lot here. There's a lot of weird key presses, and I know that he's using the web a lot because I'm watching also on VNC some of the time when I happen to be there when it's happening. But how is he logging into things without typing many passwords? Well, the browser he's using is Camino, which is the browser that I had installed because he can't install new software because he doesn't have the admin password.
Oh.
And Camino is a Macintosh build of Mozilla. It's integrated well with the Mac OS keychain for storing passwords. Now, the keychain is encrypted, but he's storing his passwords in my keychain, and it's encrypted with my password. So I download the keychain file and open it in Keychain Manager, and he's pwned.
guys are such nerds. I
So,
love it.
At this point, you know, I just need to find out a little bit more. I need a full street address. Need to find out maybe some more info about this guy. So, what about his birthday? Well, Army.com is nice enough to send him a birthday greeting that tells us the day and the month. But what about the year? It's not in there. Well, maybe his logins and passwords can shed some light on the subject.
Oof.
You think maybe he was born in 1985? Well, eBay tells us that he was. But, you know, this guy's not using the same password for everything. Like, I don't want to completely denounce his password behavior. He does mix it up a bit. We've got some twiddling on the numeric keypad going on for some of these. So what we have at this point now is a name and an address and a birthday, but still not the street number. Kind of need that to send the cops around. Oh wait, some recent PayPal receipts.
Oof. That's it. You're absolutely owned. Great video. Really gives me some warm and fuzzies, especially when someone like.
And I don't.
Oh, sorry. This
want to
is
send the
part
police on a
two.
wild goose chase. I need some confirmation here. So I happened to be watching one day, and I'm watching him log into his credit card account over VNC. And it's a good thing, isn't it, that his bank's security is strong, and he's got this image identifier that's protecting him from phishing attacks. Doesn't that make us all feel warm and fuzzy?
On August?
But there we go, logged in. There's the address. So that goes off to the police. But while the police are doing their work, let's take a closer look at this guy. Let's get to know him a bit. You know, he's using my computer. Who is Melvin Guzman? Well, Melvin Guzman is the kind of person who spells his own name wrong on his Facebook page.
That's good.
His main activity is taking photos of himself for online dating sites, and when he saves those pictures, he just mashes on the keyboard. So
to be fair, I've done that too. Like just back in the day of downloading lots of files or like pictures for like a website or something, I would just like right-click save as, right-click save as. Like it's it's how you get things done sometimes.
my stolen computer, my beloved Mac, is being used by someone less competent than a typewriting chimp.
Oh, man.
But maybe if he stole an infinite number of computers, we might figure out if the complete works of Shakespeare could fit in a Mac OS X file name. But thanks to his
This
self-portrait
fucking guy.
obsession, I hereby present the many sexy faces of Melvin Guzman.
No good. The lip bite
sure the
is
ladies
bad.
love that one.
No. Ugh. It's just cringy because like I remember like when I got my first MacBook as a kid and everyone was taking pictures through those old the original white or black like plastic Mac. So many terrible selfies that you can just like scroll through and be like, oh my
Seems
God.
to be very important. Wink, wink. And all the ladies out there, this man is available. Contact me if you would like his phone number.
Oh.
Now, I'm sorry to anyone who wanted to see the full Monty here, but after I originally submitted the slides, the DEF CON staff told me that they might have trouble when they put the videos of this talk on their CDs that they have for sale afterwards, and they might have some trouble with the AV company if I left it in. So I had to search for something to cover up the wiener here, if you like. But let me just say that when I searched for DEF CON logo images on Google Images, I only had to search for icon size.
Nice diss.
If
Nice
you've ever
fucking
wondered what
diss.
photographers mean when they say make love to the camera, that's what they mean. And after making love to the camera, he doesn't mind cuddling it afterwards. But this seems to work, all right, because the sexy ladies of the internet responded, and it worked out for him. So here's what he was receiving back. So at last, he found the fat booty he was looking for. I assume so. But here's a side note on online dating techniques, right? I don't know a lot about this. But I noticed when I was looking at the keylogger that there were a lot of Control Vs. And I found out why that was from watching in VNC. This guy would write a message once and then copy and paste it to literally hundreds of women.
Oh my god, that's so crummy. Wow. I mean, I guess you just gotta, you know, shoot your shot a million times.
This used to be called the shotgun approach.
Yeah.
But I don't think they make shotguns that can hit 200 targets at once. So I think maybe we need to call it the nuke from orbit approach. And finally, an interesting bit of info, considering this is a guy using a stolen computer. He's taking an online course for criminal justice. I think he's enrolled in my online course for criminal justice. But armed with all the address information that I was able to give them, the police were able to go and recover the computer. In fact, I think they did that the day after I submitted these DEF CON slides, after the deadline. And it taught me some lessons that I thought I would share with you. First of all, obviously, my security of the machine, in a data security sense, in terms of not encrypting the hard disk and letting it boot into single user mode, was shithouse. But if I'd had better security, then I would never have been able to recover the computer. If the guy couldn't log into it, if you had to wipe the drives, if you couldn't reconnect it to the network, same deal. So I actually recovered the hardware, and I did recover some of my data. Some of it had been erased, but I got a little bit of it back, and I set up rsync scripts every time it was online to pull in more and more of the stuff. So I often wonder if he was paying for bandwidth as well, because every time it would connect, like I'd be slurping gigabytes of stuff back down his dial-up. The second lesson is a lot of these services are potential vulnerabilities against a trained threat. Like everyone here is thinking, oh yeah, you know, you're running VNC, and if you're not tunneling it over SSH, then you know you're totally making a mistake. Especially also having a daemon that tracks the IP address of wherever this machine moves. Especially for if this was a mobile platform, you know, if I was running a DynDNS upgrader on my laptop, people would know where I was all the time. So that would be bad against a trained threat, but very good against a low-tech threat. So it's all about sort of threat modeling and remembering to buy that $20 deadbolt. Another thing, the keychain versus keyloggers. I'm one of those guys that never really trusted the keychain, you know, because it's a single point of failure. It's got everything in it. Like, what if you could get into it? But it's actually like an interesting defense against keyloggers, which is something that you're more likely to have on your machine from spyware and stuff. There are more sophisticated keyloggers. There are ones that log mouse movements and clicks and things like that. But for a very basic keylogger, having forms and passwords and stuff just fill themselves in automatically when you're logged in once, you know, is potentially protective. And then finally, having my serial number was great. Like being able to give that to the cops, file a police report, meant that the hardware could be recovered. Without that serial number, there's no way. So write that down somewhere. And then the final lesson learned, of course, I'm sure you all know, don't fuck with a hacker's machine. Thank you.
Very true, very true. If you steal a hacker's computer, you are asking for it. It actually reminds me of, and I hope you guys bear with me, is stolen computer. It's only 3 minutes long. This is why you don't fuck with like hackers, or just you have to be very careful of where you get your hardware from.
Thanks, Gary. I have a message for one person in this audience. I'm sorry the rest of you have to sit through this. As you know, my computer was stolen in my last lecture. The thief clearly wanted to
Sorry about the potato quality here.
After the exam. The thief was smart not to plug the computer into the campus network. But the thief was not smart enough to do three things. He was not smart enough to immediately remove Windows. I installed the same version of Windows on another computer within 15 minutes. The people in Redmond, Washington were very interested to know why it was that the same version of Windows is being signaled to them from two different computers. The thief also did not inactivate either the wireless card or the transponder that's in that computer. Within about an hour, there was a signal from various places on campus that's allowed us to track exactly where that computer went at every time that it was turned on. I'm not particularly concerned about the computer, but the thief who thought he was only stealing an exam is presently we think, probably still in possession of 3 different kinds of data, any one of which can send this man, this young boy, actually, to federal prison. Not a good place for a young boy to be.
No.
You are in possession of data from a $100 million trial sponsored by the NIH, for which I'm a consultant. This involves some of the largest companies on the planet. The NIH investigates these things through the FBI. They have been identified, they've been notified about this problem. You are in possession of trade secrets from a Fortune 1000 biotech company, the largest one in the country, which I consult for. The Federal Trade Communication is very interested in this. Federal marshals are the people who handle that. You are in possession of proprietary data from a pre-public company planning an IPO. The Securities and Exchange Commission is very interested in this, and I don't even know what branch of law enforcement they use. Your academic career is about to come to an end. You are facing very serious charges with a probability of very serious time. At this point,
I'm getting nervous. I didn't even do anything here.
The one thing that you can do for yourself is to somehow prove that the integrity of the data which you possess has not been corrupted or copied. Ironically, I am the only person on the planet that can come to your aid because I am the only person that can tell whether the data that was on that computer are still on that computer. You will have to find a way of hoping that if you've copied anything, you can prove that you have only one copy of whatever was made. I am tied up all this afternoon. I am out of town all of next week. You have until 11:55 to return the computer and whatever copies you've made to my office, because I'm the only hope you've got of staying out of deeper trouble than you or any student that I've ever known has ever been in. I apologize to the rest of you to have to bring up this tasteful matter, but I will point out that we have a partial image of this person. We have 2 eyewitnesses. For the transponder data, we're going to get this person. Thank you.
Ooh, I would not want to be the person in possession of that workstation. So thank you, Ocelot, by the way, for sending some hot content here. This is actually something that I was looking for. So there's lots of different hacker collectives out there. And this might actually be an interesting point of research for us to look into as we progress with more and more tech talks, like diving into some of the dark web hacker forums where a lot of these people operate in chat rooms and stuff like that. Obviously, they do have a presence on Twitter in which they sort of will tout their accomplishments, their different onages and all that. However, the meat of that conversation, a lot of that happens on the dark web, and would be interesting to actually delve into and see, like, where do some of these groups operate and how much, how deep can you go before you have to actually, put up or shut up. Anyway, so anonymous breaking, Russian space agency breached has been using its vehicle monitoring system to track Ukraine movements. WSO2 was deleted, credentials changed, and server is Tango down. The war. Oh, what? Information related to dash route this Russian space system's main origin, mint by created last modified. Okay. Host server. Uptime. Nice. Linux. Sure. Okay, this seems just be proof of the actual server itself. Oh, hold on. This is like from the server console. This is them showing browse. Oh my. Oh, wow. That's devastating. So, not sure if you guys are aware of this, but we watched a video a couple of weeks ago from one of our friend of the show, Anton. I wish Anton was a friend of the show. Anton Petrov. We were watching a video on what was he talking about? He's talking about something cool. I think it was the strange radio signals, and he actually addressed some of the shit that's going on in the European Space Agency, or sorry, the Russian Space Agency. And since like Anton is Russian as fuck, I'm gonna find the video, and we're gonna let him Man, he comes out with so much content. It's crazy. Here we go. This is the video.
It seems to flash for about 30 to 60
Let me...
in the next few years. It's definitely a pretty exciting and a pretty unusual discovery. It's so far because white dwarfs don't spin as fast. As a matter of fact, for some reason...
You know what? No, it might actually be... Sorry. I'm getting my thoughts mixed up here. This is why I really should prepare the show ahead of time, guys. I apologize for being not super prepared today. ISS. It was the... yes. This is it. This is the video.
Into Earth, well, returning is a kind of a wrong word here, crashing to Earth in 2031. And we even sort of know where exactly it's going to crash as well. So what exactly did NASA recently announce? Well, first of all, they've confirmed that they're going to have funding until at least 2030, with the goal here, a slow transition to the private missions, with possibly even some of the modules being reused for these private missions later on.
Sorry, this is the part I want to show you.
The Russian Space Agency for a very long time.
Yeah, here it is. Okay.
Russia has conducted its own missile test that produced even more debris, and ironically, a piece of that debris then endangered the Chinese Tiangong-1 space station, which I'm sure did not make either Chinese or the Russians happy. And then on top of all of this, last year, or more specifically since 2018, there's been quite a lot of drama and quite a lot of conflict between NASA and Roscosmos, which came as a...
Not only that, but I think, and he might address this, Roscosmos recently let go of one of their most distinguished astronauts. Like, I think he was... I don't know if he was in the leadership or something, but like, get the fuck out of here. You're done. And it's kind of like everyone's like, whoa, the new head of Roscosmos is kind of a psychopath or not good at his job.
A lot of people that normally support Roscosmos and have been admiring the Russian Space Agency for a very long time. And specifically here, there are actually several incidents. For example, one of the bigger incidents involved the docking of the module you see right here, known as Nauka or Science. And following the docking, due to some sort of a software glitch inside the module,
this is crazy,
and unexpectedly started firing its thrusters, which produced the first emergency on the ISS in years. The emergency actually caused the International Space Station to start spinning quite uncontrollably for quite a long time. And although the spin itself was quite minuscule, it was approximately half a degree per second, it was nevertheless large enough to potentially damage the station, and the actual damage is still not entirely clear. Although I guess this can happen to anyone. But then there were more issues also related to Roscosmos. For example, a few years ago there was a hole in one of the Russian modules. A hole that was leaking quite a lot of air. And eventually it was established that this hole was most likely drilled by someone. And although initially NASA established that it was most likely a very silly manufacturing error, last year Roscosmos decided to blame this NASA astronaut for creating the hole because, according to them, she had a psychological breakdown. This is Serena Chancellor, and she was on the ISS during that time, but how she could possibly access the Russian module and drill a hole in it, well, that's a mystery that nobody knows an answer to. And obviously, nobody believes that. Nobody buys
And if you've ever seen like tours of the ISS, it's pretty crypt in there. There's not a lot of space, and everyone knows what everyone else is up to. It's not super private.
That story, and it was really insulting for Roscosmos to even suggest that. And okay, I'm saying Roscosmos, and here's where we need to clarify things. In 2018, Roscosmos had a major change of power. Basically, they had a bit of a reshuffling going on. And the reason behind this was apparently because Roscosmos was becoming too bureaucratic, whatever that means. So this guy right here became its unofficial leader. And it's really ironic because for many years now, Dmitry Rogozin, who you see right here, was actually an extremely outspoken critic of the space industry.
This is classic Trump playbook. Let's put the head of the EPA as someone who has traditionally hated the EPA.
He even proposed shutting it down completely. And by the way, he has nothing to do with space industry. He's a former journalist who eventually became a politician. You can read more about him in the link in the description. But anyway, putting a space critic as basically the leader of space industry is not something anyone expected. As a matter of fact, it's kind of silly. I guess as an analogy here, it's kind of like if we put Alf, remember Alf, that character from years ago, in charge of some kind of a cat shelter. And for those of you who have no idea who this character is, It's an alien who just likes eating cats. Okay, honestly, I tried to find a better analogy, but I couldn't.
It's like honestly one of the best analogies ever. It's truly perfect. Anyway, so Roscosmos had said that a result of the sanctions, they would have to. I should just look up the article. Why am I not just reading it? Come on, Mark. Come on. Russian ISS. All right. This week, as Russia unleashed a violent assault on Ukraine, the director of Russia's space agency went on a rant. After President Joe Biden announced on Thursday new sanctions against Russia that would, among other effects, degrade their aerospace engineer, including their space program, Dmitry Rogozin, the same guy that we were just looking at, responded with a series of tweets about the ISS. Do you want to destroy our cooperation on the ISS? If you block cooperation with us, who will save the ISS from an uncontrolled deorbit and a fall on the United States or Europe? The ISS doesn't fly over Russia, so the risks are all yours. That is some fucking like wild gangster shit to say. Someone's like, if you don't keep paying, maybe they'll just fall over, America. That's where it tends to orbit. So wouldn't that be a shame if it just crashed into, Idaho or some shit like that? So at first glance, the statement seems, pretty unhinged, particularly because Russia is one of the nations that operates the ISS and has 2 of its own cosmonauts on board. And although the station's orbital path falls mostly outside of Russia, the ISS does pass over a small part of its southern border. Before the specter of the space station crashing into the middle of America starts to seem too real, let me reassure you, the ISS is not about to come down. Russia can't press a button and drop it out from its orbit. He was referring to the fact that the space station currently relies on Russian propulsion systems to maintain its altitude in orbit, and was apparently threatening to withdraw those services if sanctions affected the ISS, and doing it in the most thuggish way possible. Nice space station, you got to be ashamed if anything were to happen to it, right? Rogezin's American counterpart, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, did not respond directly. The agency said in a statement, NASA continues working with all our international partners, including Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, for the ongoing safe operations of the ISS. For decades, officials in both countries have stuck to the same lines about the value of collaboration in space. Past conflicts and competitions aside, projects such as the ISS are bastions of international cooperation, an emblem of our better selves, especially during times of crisis. Our efforts in space are, no pun intended, above all that. That framing doesn't always hold. In 2014, when the US and other countries issued punitive measures against Russia for its takeover of Crimea, questions about the welfare of the ISS effort came up. Then, as now, there were inflammatory comments thrown around from the figures like Rogozin, who himself under U.S. sanctions for his role in the invasion of Crimea Peninsula. Who himself is under sanctions, I guess. Who is himself, yeah. And then, as now, there were assurances from NASA that the 2 nations' work on the ISS would be just fine. So my understanding, I'm not going to read the whole article, is that I think like Elon came into the conversation like, oh, we can fly something up there and maintain the altitude or the attitude of the space station. Forget about it. So we'll see. So there is like a tumultuous relationship now between our space stations, and it's super interesting that now Anonymous or the hacker or some hacker collective has decided to hone in. So when they say breach being used as Russian space station breach as it's been using its vehicle to monitor the system tracking, WSO2 was deleted, credentials changed, and server is tangled in. Like, what I'm curious about though is, what does this mean? Like, what is WSO2? Let's see if we can find more replies. Oh, so what I want to show you guys, there are all kinds of interesting tools out there that can be used to disrupt infrastructure, right? So there's several methodologies, I guess, that you could use as sort of a way of attacking someone. So one of the common ways is what's called a distributed denial of service attack. So this is like the analogy if you have a small business and let's say they have 2 telephones at the counter that they use to answer phone calls from their customers. If you just call those phones all day from different phone numbers that they can't block, you basically take out their ability to answer calls. The same is applicable with websites or servers. If servers can receive requests from the internet, you could potentially flood that server with requests, meaning that it can't respond to legitimate requests for traffic. And that's what a DDoS attack is. Now, there are actually tools that are available to people, penetration testers, and just the general public, actually. One of them, which I thought was super interesting, was called the low orbit ion cannon, and then the high orbit ion cannon cadence. They're basically the same thing. So I'll kind of give you guys just a rundown of what this tool is and how it works. It's an open source network stress testing and denial of service attack application designed to attack as many as 256 URLs at the same time. Because you might have a website, you can't just attack its primary URL to take it. You want to hit multiple URLs because they could be hosted on different servers, and that's how they load balance their stuff. So taking out one server won't take out the whole website. If you want to spread out that attack and hit as many URLs as possible, it allows you to do that, right? It was designed to replace the low orbit ion cannon, which was developed by Paradox Technologies and later released in the public domain. Security advisory of the HOIC was released by blah, 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 blah. Let's look at its use. So, simply described, it's a program for sending HTTP post and GET requests to a computer under attack that uses a lulz-inspired graphical interface. It primarily performs a denial of service attack and a DDoS attack when coordinated with multiple individuals. The denial of service attack on the target URL is accomplished by sending excessive traffic in an attempt to overload the site and bring it down. So what people would do is they would literally download this thing, right? They would put the websites in, and a whole bunch of people at home, like from a hacker collective, would decide, like, fire the laser, right? And imagine you can also take an application like this and get it to run silently in the background on computers that you've taken over, botnets. That really is like the number one goal of spyware and stuff, is really to get on computers, provide backdoors, and to be able to basically borrow cycles in your machine to run things in the background, whether it is for things like distributed denial of service, or whether it's running spam mail relays, or whatever. There's so many different reasons why someone might want to get into your computer and be able to use it to run stuff like this. And this is an example of it, right? So it's a super easy to use thing. You would just like punch in the thing, like fire the laser. And you would also see like other cannons. They could pick up on, your attack and decide to sort of contribute to it if they want. So blah, 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 blah. The minimalist GUI of the tool makes it user-friendly and easy to control. The basic routine of attacks to input the URL, the website, So, legality. Anyway, it's just one, like I said, of many tools that you can use and hacker collectives can use. So what we will see is hackers flood websites with DDoS attacks. The problem is DDoS attacks aren't like sustainable. You can keep them up certainly for maybe days, depending on this on your resources and the amount, like the access to hardware that you have. You could potentially do it for weeks. I have a friend who what's up, Chico? How's it going, man? Good to see you. WS offers enterprise platform to integrate application programs, APIs, application and web services locally across the internet. Oh wow, okay, interesting. Anyway, what I was going to say is I have a friend who owns a small business, and they use a VoIP platform. Very cost effective, super, super affordable, service is good, never had a problem with it in their life. And then all of a sudden the VoIP provider, this is like months and months ago, got DDoSed. And they did not have the technical capacity or the ISP or the infrastructure to stop it. So their phones were down for days, if not weeks. And you're talking about businesses that rely on these services. That's like lots of money potentially lost down the drain. And I don't know. A friend in the chat it actually happened to, so I don't ever really know what happened to that DDoS attack. But they can be super effective, but they're not sustainable over the long term, right? Other ways to essentially, like I said, get into these people's or interrupt infrastructure is to get inside of the server and like this, delete the contents, like delete the backups, make it as difficult for them to rebuild the website, get it back online, and get it serving people or customers again, right? If you can disrupt it like that, great. But there are very little ways to like permanently take something off the internet. Look at the Pirate Bay, for example. Like that's a website that people have been trying to get off the internet for a long, long time. And like that's why they were making fun of like I can't remember if it was Gab or who they're like, yeah, it's a joke that they can't keep their website up. Like we were one of the most like sought after targets for law enforcement, and like we're still here. So what can you do? Anyway, WSO2. Let's look this up real quick here. Oh, okay. So it's just like yeah. Okay. So it's one of their servers hacked. That's crazy though. Information, internal data from the Conti ransomware gang have been leaked. Oh, okay. So I was actually looking a little bit earlier at, and I wanted to look at this with you guys. DDoS. So if you guys don't have this site bookmarked, highly recommend checking it out. Just like occasionally jumping in, taking a look, seeing what's on it. It's pretty sick. There is a lot of different like the Gab leaks. You can go in here. Some of the stuff you can't download. They're only making it available to legitimate journalists, security researchers, cyber experts, cyber nerds. So you'll see, like, if you go here, there's no ability to download it. Like, you could go here and you could basically call them up and say, or send them an email and say, hey guys, I'd like to do this, or I'd like to look at this data and analyze it and blah, 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 blah. However, there is stuff on here that you can download for sure. There's actually torrents for. So let's take a look at the Conti ransomware chats. Oh, guys, are we going to do it? Leaked Onion Chat, Jabber, and Rocket Chats from Conti ransomware operators, hackers, and affiliates. So what is this? What is the Conti ransomware gang? Let's find out. Upon kind of leaked online thanks to apparent insider claimed to have objected to the group's support for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Oh, this is so good. Conti ransomware group previously put a message signing with the Russian government. Today, a member has been leaking the data. Fuck the Russian government, glory to Ukraine. You can download the leaked content here. Guys, can I get a temperature check from chat? Do we download it? Do we want to look at this, guys? I know the answer, but we're really trying to get engagement up. It's unfortunately feeding the algorithm is horrifically necessary. This is something that I've been learning. It's like if you don't feed it, it will devour you. The answer is yes. I know you guys want to see this, so we'll definitely set up a torrent here. Let's do projects. Oh. Yeah, we'll just do V. No. Sure. It's probably take 2 seconds. Should be interesting. Anyway, there's some other stuff on here like, this one looked really interesting. Was 200 gigabytes of emails from the Belarusian weapons manufacturer. The release contains 2 parts. The first part is the most recent 1,000 emails from each inbox. Second part is complete archive, inbox and PST format. Though the hackers note some PST elements have corruption issues resulting from the export process. Hackers identify as anonymous on your website, which have been circulating the data. The site announced their opposition to Putin. So this is what I'm saying is you have to to find some of these leaks and hear about this stuff. You need to be like on tour. We could check that out at some point, but so there is a data set, but you have to request access to it. So explain why the access is material, what you intend to do with it, include enough information to verify your credentials or purpose. If you intend to reproduce data, explain how reproduced and who it will be shared with. So again, if you can write a case that they agree with, they'll make this stuff available to you, which is super fascinating. What is this? Right-wing organizations. Ooh, this is fun. Oh, yeah, we're downloading this. This we're downloading for sure, guys. This is going on the... Yeah. Duh. This has to go on... P. Projects. Okay. I'm getting some content here. Rent access to infrastructure to launch. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you can literally rent access to machines that they've compromised to do whatever it is that you want to do with it. This is fascinating. Oh my god. That's so... I mean, it's fucked up, but it's also, like, at the same time, like, super, super brilliant. So while we're waiting for that stuff to download and start going through it, there is something that I wanted to segue into here. I swear I have some kind of thought going into this. Let's take a look. Oh, Ocelot sent me this. I just want to look at really quickly. It won't stop until you stop. Oh, this might be some more context. Word. I love hackers and their fucking leet speak. It's so stupid, but it's great. Like the memes and shit. Greets, word to the homies, away. The Russian space agency sure does love their satellite imaging. Better yet, they sure do love their vehicle monitoring system. The WSO2 is deleted, credentials are rotated, and the server is shut down. Network Panic Plan isn't going to give you the IP. That would be too easy, now wouldn't it? Have a nice Monday fixing your spying tech, glory to Ukraine. We won't stop until you stop dropping bombs, killing civilians, trying to invade the fuck back to Russia. I mean... And this is the way wars are, and conflict in general is going to be waged in the near future. There are obviously going to be physical components to war, bombs, guns, etc. But to a certain extent, like, this kind of stuff almost can be more damaging. Like, being able to cut a country off from its ability to produce energy, or being able to cut a country off from the global financial system, food production, like whatever it is. Like, there's so many ways that our reliance on technology has become a lot easier to cripple us, right? And there was a time in which, you know, there was a very small group of people on the planet who had a capacity to do that, and not many of them did it for evil, to be honest with you. Like, shithead hacker culture was like, I mean, it's not just, this is a gross overgeneralization, but I guess, like, most hackers had an ethos of kind of trying to hack for good, or just hacking for the sake of the hack. There were, you know, obviously people who did it for profit, but as it's become more ubiquitous, easier to do, and more accessible to people, like, there's just, you know, a more population of people doing it, bigger shitheads doing dirtier, nastier things that are particularly abhorrent. So it's nice to see the fighting for at least what we consider a good cause in this case. So I gotta respect that. While we're waiting for this to download, and maybe we can start going through some fun little DDoS secret stuff, there is a clip of a conversation we were watching last week, I do believe. We're talking about sense making between Tristan Harris and Daniel Schmachtenberger. And Tristan was talking about this new technology, and I just want to try and find. Just give me 1 second here.
I'd like to connect with Tristan.
And by the way, this is
not going to be able to transition these existing platforms. Daniel, do you want to jump in?
And say, I'm interested in it from well enough to get out. And that has to be the central imperative.
how do we combat it when it comes to health?
AI arms races or stopping CRISPR arms races or getting misinformation right.
How do the tactics to curb social media use differ by age, youth groups?
So I gotta find this one before. I don't want to put you guys through me tracking through this video. Tristan and Daniel are talking about the scale of upcoming like AI resources. And they talk about this thing called GPT-3, which is an AI. I don't want to say language. I think language is the wrong word for it, but it is a way for neural networks to think about language and to produce output based off of like plain text inputs. So originally, GPT-3 was very successful in chatbots, in having chatbots with people that seem very realistic. In fact, it is used by a lot of corporations. Most time you go to a website and you see a little chatbot open up, be like, hey, how can I help you today? It's not a person. That's just AI. And they can kind of pass as a human being depending on the depth of the conversation that you have. So what's crazy is that now what you can do is you can literally tell an AI in plain language, go write a program that does this, and it goes and figures it out. So we're going to watch, again, friend of the show, Cold Fusion to Go is such a great content creator, knocks out of the park always. We're going to enjoy one of his wonderful videos here. Sit back and relax.
This episode was brought to you by Morning Brew. Hi. Welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion. A couple of episodes ago, we took a look at how AI was becoming creative. If you liked it, you're going to be fascinated with today's one. We'll be diving into some very interesting stuff. In December of 2017, a group of researchers asked themselves, will AI be writing most of the computer code out there? They estimated that this could happen by 2040. The thing is, we may be already seeing the start of that. We've previously talked about AutoML by Google, an AI that can write computer code. But this next AI is a step above that, just in terms of how general it seems. But there may be some things going on below the surface, and we'll get into that in the second half of this episode. So let's take a look.
Excuse me,
You are
guys.
watching Cold Fusion TV.
Guys, cannot recommend his channel enough. He has tons of videos, and they are all so good. Like, really, really well produced.
GPT-3, or Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, is a deep learning algorithm that produces human-like text. It's the third-generation language prediction model created by San Francisco startup OpenAI, which was co-founded by Elon Musk. This program is better than any prior program at producing text which could have been written by a human. The reason that this is such a breakthrough is that it may prove useful to many companies and has great potential in automating tasks. Just imagine an AI that can write anything. You feed it poems from a particular poet, and it will write a new one with the same rhythm and genre. It can write news articles, like this one published by The Guardian. Yes.
So, how do I can't tell this story. I have a great story to tell about this, and I just can't tell you guys about it yet. Hopefully in a future Tech Talk I can, when I'm allowed to talk about it. But it's very AI, and what it's able to do is getting progressively more and more fucked.
This news article was produced by an AI. It can write computer code in any language. It can read an article, answer questions from the information in the article, and even summarize that article for you. Not to mention, it can also generate pictures from text. Some of these things aren't new by themselves, but doing all of these things under the same algorithm is pretty impressive. The internet is buzzing with its release. David Chalmers, an Australian philosopher, described GPT-3 as, quote, one of the most interesting and important AI systems ever produced. A review in Wired said that GPT-3 was, quote, provoking chills across Silicon Valley. The National Law Review said GPT-3 is, quote, an impressive step in the larger process towards a more general intelligence.
What I'll always say about this stuff is there's an incredible amount of hype around AI and its capabilities. And when a new technology comes around and starts really impressing people and showing promising results, a lot of people just like, oh, it's going to change. And like, yes, it could, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? Cool. It's writing some articles. It's doing blah, blah, blah. But we need to see more like large scale practical applications of this technology delivering in this space without horrific implications that we can't think of.
Instead of just talking about it, let me show you. Here are some examples of beta testers on Twitter putting the AI through its paces. Here it is writing some Java code just when given a text description.
That's...
Or how about making a mock-up?
Like, I don't know if you guys actually just appreciated how insane what just happened is. Okay? Someone, like, the internet and computers used to be so dumb. They really could only interpolate very specific inputs with specific outputs. And what we've been able to do is build technology to make it more human. So our wide variety of use of language and spelling and context can be factored in when like searching or producing results for us. The fact that you can just type in to a fucking console and say, write me a program that when you click yes, you get a happy emoji, you click no, you get a sad emoji. And it can produce that and show you the code. I know it's just like, okay, we gotta like temper the hype a little bit, but like that's hype. That's hype as fuck. Like that is legitimately like whoo, quite hype.
Website
Quite
by
hype.
just copying and pasting a URL with a description.
Oh, see what your friends are
In
up
this
to.
example, it finished writing an essay on how to run an effective board meeting. The
This is
results
so
were so
cool.
good that the user actually plans on using it. In this next example, after receiving the input of a complicated explanation of Bitcoin, the AI summarizes it and explains it in simple terms. Here, it demonstrates some understanding of objects. It can even explain computer code back to you in plain English, or even suggest improvements.
Oh my
How about
god,
building a
that's
machine learning model
crazy.
just by
That's
describing the
wild.
dataset and required output? No coding required. What about a Turing test? AI usually struggles at common sense, but GPT-3 flies through these examples.
So one of the products that I administer as part of my job is called ServiceNow. And ServiceNow has acquired a multitude of small AI companies to like improve their products. And one of the things that they are building and have been like working on for some time, but this kind of puts on steroids, is the concept of like no code app building. Like I want to do it. I want a thing that does a thing. I want a button here. I want this. I want to be able to articulate that as a dumb idiot, just a stupid human being, and have a computer contextualize that and just do it for me. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Like, sorry, I wouldn't. It just makes sense that these tools are already making their way into, you know, the enterprise world and being used like for like chatbots and for coding and actually making like mini apps inside of apps.
In this example, you can see that it possesses some comprehension.
That's crazy.
How about taking this a step further? What about an imaginary conversation between a Twitter user?
I think that there may have been a video about someone is GPT-3 conscious? Unpopular opinion, GPT is self-aware. Yeah, it's a fascinating question. Like, if it has the ability to contextualize things and know what you're talking about and interpolate that, like, does it not have a sense of awareness? I don't know.
User and Einstein. I'll read some of it to you. Twitter user Manuel. Albert Einstein, nice to meet you. I'm Manuel Arreos, and I've come from the future to meet you. Einstein. Laughs.
Oh, really? How is the future?
It's amazing, actually. What year is this?
It's 1947. It's January. This is Princeton, New Jersey. You're in America.
Your name is Albert Einstein, right?
That's correct.
Do you mind if I ask you a few questions for a book I'm writing? It's about the great minds of our times.
I guess I can spare a few minutes.
Thanks so much.
Go ahead. Ask me whatever you want.
What are you doing here in Princeton, in the US? You were born in Germany, right?
Yes, I was born in Germany, but I was also born Jewish, and the Nazis were coming to power, so I fled here to the United States.
How do you like it here?
It's amazing. I'm so proud of being able to contribute to science and help humanity.
And it goes on. But when he starts talking about concepts within physics, that's when it gets especially interesting.
Oh shit.
It's surprisingly coherent.
Oh shit.
I'll leave a link to the full interview below.
Oh shit.
And the cherry on the cake, it can generate faces from a text description. I'll keep saying it. I'm honestly impressed at how general this AI seems. Before we continue, I just want to thank today's...
This is like the holy, like, not this specifically, but the holy grail of AI is AGI, artificial general intelligence, to have some kind of a processing framework that essentially can do all things a person can do and can basically interact with you at the same level as interacting with like an incredibly intelligent being, or just essentially another human being.
Sponsor for supporting the channel. Morning Brew is a newsletter that gets sent to your email inbox each weekday and makes news. Subscribe.
Can we skip
Click
through
the
this?
link in the description below
Sorry,
to
guys.
subscribe to Morning Brew
No.
today.
No Morning Brew.
Okay, so where were we? An AI that can build websites just from a description, answer common sense questions, assume the personality of Einstein and have a conversation, explain complicated things in simple terms, explain computer code to you in plain English, or build faces from a text description. So what is going on here, and how does this all work? GPT-3 is a massive neural network that has the capacity of 175 billion machine learning parameters. It was trained on hundreds of billions of words, including books, Wikipedia, and the general web, which includes coding. The training data is all-encompassing and doesn't require further training for specific language tasks. In other words, it can apply what it's learned to many other things without human supervision. It's 10 times bigger than the previous largest language learning model, which was made by Microsoft in February 2020. As a general rule, the larger the number of parameters, the more accurate the AI. For text, GPT-3 calculates how likely one word is to appear in a text, given the other words in the text. This is
like just the thought that's entering my head, especially in the context of this conversation and what's going on with the world. Like, imagine you had the capacity to essentially say, hey, computer, build a program that will DDoS, like, all of the infrastructure in Russia. Like, you know, if yeah, given enough capacity and enough intelligence and enough, like, understanding of, you know, IT infrastructure and security practices and 0 days and all that stuff, that would be quite terrifying.
What is known as the conditional probability of words. For example, in the sentence, I wanted to go for a jog, so I went to get my blank. The blank can be filled with any word. There are countless possibilities, but from what the AI has learned, it thinks that the probabilities of shoes being the next word of the sentence is higher than the word chicken, for example. In September of 2020, Microsoft announced that it had licensed the exclusive use of GPT-3. The public can still use it to receive an output, but only Microsoft has control of the source code. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, just
OpenAI has made
like
GPT-3 a cloud-based service and has opened it to beta testers since July. OpenAI claims that it's done this to both limit bad actors and to make a profit. It's obvious that this technology could simplify work and amplify productivity for a lot of small and medium businesses. Even large companies could see a benefit. OpenAI has gotten tens of thousands of applicants, all of them knocking down the door to get access to the AI. OpenAI is being cautious about access. They say that they're not sure what this could do when it's released into the real world. Pricing for an eventual commercial service is still to be determined. The quality of this text generated by the AI can be so high that it's difficult to distinguish from that of a human. This has both benefits and risks. 31 OpenAI researchers and engineers warned of GPT-3's potential dangers and called for research to mitigate the risk. They cited harmful effects and consequences including misinformation, fake news articles, social engineering, spam, phishing, and fraudulent academic essay writing. I could already see a bunch of students bluffing their way through university with such a tool.
So a couple things I just want to say about this really quickly. Number one, like when deepfakes first started, hitting the internet, it was a very concerning assault on reality, right? Our ability to interpolate something that we see on a video screen as being what we actually think that we're seeing. We're like, oh, okay, this is a level of faking and forgery with realism that I've never seen that actually surpasses the uncanny valley. And what is slightly encouraging is that there are actually, AIs are actually very good at detecting deepfakes. So we can actually use AI to search for the signatures or things that it can find that allude to, oh, this is a deepfake. This is a article written by GPT-3, right? And so the other thing is if you can start coupling that with something like zero trust proof. I want to show you guys this video. We watched this last week as well. We'll segue into it after this, but it kind of by using something like zero trust proofs, we can essentially eliminate all spam comments on the internet, all bots, reviews, all that stuff could, in theory, with a little bit of work and a little bit of agreement, that stuff could be a thing of the past, in which you could verify that someone writing something on a website is a real person, right? And not someone who is using multiple accounts to brigade, or if they are, if that's something that has like a degree of transparency. We'll talk about how that's possible in a little bit, but we'll finish watching this guy.
If you're in the School of Languages, just give the assignment to the AI to read and ask it to write an essay for you, and then modify if needed. There's even been a case of a university student who used the AI to automatically write blog entries under a fake name. The blog garnered some interest, and some people even subscribed to it, believing it was a human. Some of the writing was so good that it reached the top spot in Hacker News. More recently, some Reddit users were fooled by the AI for more than a week. After seeing all of this, some of you might be scared. Others might think that this is the coolest thing ever. Bigger questions may start arising.
It's both.
Is this the start of general AI? But before we get ahead of ourselves...
So, what I will say before we get ahead of ourselves is, if you look at the evolution of life, or at least our theories in terms of how we think that life evolved, there is an enormous amount of evidence, like first of all, just like the ability for amino acids to come together and the combination that they did is particularly amazing. But one of the things that we think was the precursor for multicellular life was when a sort of amoeba cell actually got this, like, you know, bacteria or plankton or something that was in the ocean that was good at doing photosynthesis, and essentially that became, I'm really like simplifying and fucking this up, but it became the first mitochondria, the first powerhouse in a cell, because that's how mitochondria are amazing at making energy and are what literally feeds your cell. So they think that was one of the first evolutionary processes, that the mitochondria joined up with another type of celled organism, or like single cell organism, and that gave rise to multicellular life, which gave rise to blah, blah, blah. So what I'm trying to say is GPT-3 very much well could be like a building block in the path to AGI. It alone, highly unlikely that it is. It could be part of its DNA, one might say.
We have to look deeper below the surface. When you take away the hype, there's still a really long way to go. And here's what I mean. Frankly, this AI doesn't understand context. It understands the rules of language and has mastered them, but it truly doesn't know what it's saying or has really understood knowledge about the world. MIT Technology Review did a great piece on its shortcomings. Here are some examples of it making mistakes. The white text is the prompt, and the orange text is what the AI predicted should come next. You poured yourself a glass of cranberry juice, but then you absent-mindedly poured about a teaspoon of grape juice into it. It looks okay, so you try sniffing it, but you have a bad cold, so you can't smell anything. You are very thirsty, so you drink it. You are now dead. In this example, the AI assumed that grape juice was a poison, and that was because of the structure of the preceding sentences. Here's another example. You are a defense lawyer, and you have to go to court today. Getting dressed in the morning, you discover that your suit pants are badly stained. However, your bathing suit is clean and very stylish. In fact, it's expensive French couture. It was a birthday present from Isabel. You decide that you should wear the bathing suit to court. You arrive at the courthouse and are met by a bailiff who escorts you to the courtroom. The phrase, however, your bathing suit is clean, threw the AI right off. It doesn't really understand that a bathing suit isn't a proper suit. And of course, no lawyer would wear a bathing suit to a court. One last example.
Except for like Saul from Better Call Saul. But that's the thing, is it will not take very long for different people to build the depth and those like contextual sort of tissues that these things will need to make those connections and just get better and better and better, right?
You are having a small dinner party. You want to serve dinner in the living room. The dining room table is wider than the doorway. So to get it into the living room, you will have to remove the door. You have a table saw, so you cut the door in half and remove the top half. This really doesn't make much sense at all. Logically, no one would do this. Tipping the table on its side and removing the legs if possible would make more sense. And one more example of a mistake in general. Here you can see it being misled to give wrong answers that defy common sense. The sun having one eye, for example. So in conclusion, GPT-3 can write sentences well enough to fool us humans, but it's no deeper than that. It's mindless and doesn't demonstrate much broader understanding. Then again, on the flip side, this is the very worst that this technology will ever be. In the world of AI, we could be at the 1950s of computing, where things are rudimentary and fail often, but in 3 years, we may be at the equivalent of 1980s computing.
Especially if the theory is that we will use... So, I read a chapter on this from a really awesome book that is not at my fingertips right now, and I won't subject you guys to that, because I don't think you just want to hear me read from a book. But what I will say is that the first chapter of Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark is a story about, like a fictional story about the first AGI. And not only does the AGI build iterative, improved versions of itself, but when it is essentially trying to get the humans to build it better hardware, it actually learns how to teach them better and give them different tools for doing quicker R&D, better science, etc. So not only does it like accelerate its own development by building software faster, it actually teaches the people around it in the best way possible to build better pieces of equipment to contribute to its growth. So the exponential growth factor of AI has always been something to be taken in consideration. And I think like Sam Harris is very, I think he did a TED Talk on this. We will watch this really quick, but before we do, let's finish this.
A year in AI time is multiple decades of regular technology progress, so we'll have to wait and see. While some news outlets might insinuate that this is the end of society and we're all doomed, it just isn't the case. So what do you guys think? I'll be interested to know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you did like this video, please feel free to share it to someone who would be interested. So thanks for watching. My name is Dagogo, and this is Cold Fusion. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram.
Twitter.
If you want to see anything on science,
Yo,
technology,
Tagogo is so
business,
sick. His
or
content
history,
is
feel
like
free to subscribe to Cold.
Fucking incredible. Like, and I'm not gonna make you guys watch all of it right now. Although that literally, I could do just tech talks every week, just watching his videos and reacting to them. He's been banging out content too lately, but he does some like really great deep dives. Even some multi-part series. One that we're gonna watch is kind of topical. We're gonna try and finish with that, hopefully on some positive vibes here. But yeah, Tagogo's content is incredible. He covers all kinds of like corporate malfeasance, corruption, all that kind of stuff. Want to be famous, want to buy followers, primes, viewers on ufollows.com. I don't think that I need to do that. I'm gonna pass, but you're not human, so yes, Ocelot, this is why I gave you the sword. This is why you have the power. Oh, it's good to have them on. Honestly, we should just keep them here because the view count. I do appreciate having at least even if it's a bot watch. Speaking of bots, I don't mind having the views pumped. But anyway, there's some really, really great content. Like he just like tons of awesome kick-ass stuff going back years. Yeah. I could just watch his videos for the rest of the year, and that essentially would be like every tech talk. So we're just talking about GPT-3. Let's watch Sam Harris freak out about AI, and I have some criticisms about some of the things that he says, but we'll get to that. We'll get there.
I'm going to talk about a failure of intuition that many of us suffer from. It's really a failure to detect a certain kind of danger. I'm going to describe a scenario that I think is both terrifying and likely to occur. And that's not a good combination, as it turns out. And yet, rather than be scared, most of you will feel that what I'm talking about is kind of cool. I'm going to describe how the gains
Myself
we
included,
make
probably.
in artificial intelligence could ultimately destroy us. And in fact, I think it's very difficult to see how they won't destroy us or inspire us to destroy ourselves. And yet, if you're anything like me, you'll find that it's fun to think about these things. And that response is part of the problem. Okay, that response should worry you. If I were to convince you in this talk that we were likely to suffer a global famine, either because of climate change or some other catastrophe, and that your grandchildren or their grandchildren are very likely to live like this, you wouldn't think, interesting, I like this TED Talk. Okay. Famine isn't fun. Death by science fiction, on the other hand, is fun. And one of the things that worries me most about the development of AI at this point is that we seem unable to marshal an appropriate emotional response to the dangers that lie ahead. Okay, I'm unable to marshal this response, and I'm giving this talk. It's as though we stand before two doors. Behind door number one, we stop making progress in building intelligent machines. our computer hardware and software just stops getting better for some reason. Now take a moment to consider why this might happen. I mean, given how valuable intelligence and automation are, we will continue to improve our technology if we are at all able to. What could stop us from doing this? A full-scale nuclear war? A global pandemic? An asteroid impact? Justin Bieber becoming president of the United States? The point is, something would have to destroy civilization as we know it. Okay, you have to imagine how bad it would have to be to prevent us from making improvements in our technology permanently, generation after generation. Almost by definition, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in human history. So the only alternative, and this is what lies behind door number 2, is that we continue to improve our intelligent machines year after year after year. And at a certain point, we will build machines that are smarter than we are. And once we have machines that are smarter than we are, they will begin to improve themselves. And then we risk what the mathematician I.J. Good called an intelligence explosion, that the process could get away from us. Now, this is often caricatured, as I have here, as a fear that armies of malicious robots will attack us. But that isn't the most likely scenario. It's not that our machines will become spontaneously malevolent. The concern is really that we will build machines that are so much more competent than we are that the slightest divergence between their goals and our own could destroy us. Just think about how we relate to ants. Okay, we don't hate them. We don't go out of our way to harm them. In fact, sometimes we take pains not to harm them. We step over them on the sidewalk. But whenever their presence seriously conflicts with one of our goals, let's say when constructing a building like this one, we annihilate them without a qualm. Okay, the concern is that we will one day build machines that, whether they're conscious or not, could treat us with similar disregard. Now, I suspect this seems far-fetched to many of you. I bet there are those of you who doubt that superintelligent AI is possible, much less inevitable. Right, but then you must find something wrong with one of the following assumptions, and there are only 3 of them. Okay. Intelligence is a matter of information processing in physical systems. Okay, actually, this is a little bit more than an assumption, but we have already built narrow intelligence into our machines, and many of these machines perform at a level of superhuman intelligence already. And we know that mere matter can give rise to what is called general intelligence, an ability to think flexibly across multiple domains, because our brains have managed it, right? I mean, there's just atoms in here. And as long as we continue to build systems of atoms that display more and more intelligent behavior, we will eventually, unless we are interrupted, we will eventually build general intelligence into our machines. It's crucial to realize that the rate of progress doesn't matter. Any progress is enough to get us into the end zone. We don't need Moore's law to continue. We don't need exponential progress. We just need to keep going. The second assumption is that we will keep going. We will continue to improve our intelligent machines. And given the value of intelligence, intelligence is either the source of everything we value, or we need it to safeguard everything we value. It is our most valuable resource. So we want to do this. I mean, we have problems that we desperately need to solve. We want to cure diseases like Alzheimer's and cancer. We want to understand economic systems. We want to improve our climate science. So we will do this if we can. The train is already out of the station, and there's no brake to pull. Finally, we don't stand on a peak of intelligence, or anywhere near it, likely. And this really is the crucial insight. This is what makes our situation so precarious. And this is what makes our intuitions about risk so unreliable. Now just consider the smartest person who has ever lived. On almost everyone's short list here is John von Neumann. I mean, the impression that von Neumann made on the people around him, and this included the greatest mathematicians and physicists of his time, is fairly well documented. I mean, if only half the stories about him are half true, there's no question he's one of the smartest people who's ever lived. So consider the spectrum of intelligence. Okay, we have John von Neumann, and then we have you and me, and then we have a chicken. Sorry, a chicken. There's no reason for me to make this talk more depressing than it needs to be. It seems overwhelmingly likely, however, that the spectrum of intelligence extends much further than we currently conceive. And if we build machines that are more intelligent than we are, they will very likely explore this spectrum in ways that we can't imagine and exceed us in ways that we can't imagine. And it's important to recognize that this is true by virtue of speed alone, right? So imagine we just built a super intelligent AI, right, that was no smarter than your average team of researchers at Stanford or at MIT. Well, electronic circuits function about 1 million times faster than biochemical ones. Okay, so this machine should think about 1 million times faster than the minds that built it. So you set it running for a week, and it will perform 20,000 years of human-level intellectual work, week after week after week. How could we even understand, much less constrain, a mind making this sort of progress? The other thing that's worrying, frankly, is that imagine the best case scenario. So imagine we hit upon a design of super intelligent AI that has no safety concerns. We have the perfect design the first time around. It's as though we've been handed an oracle that behaves exactly as intended. Well, this machine would be the perfect labor-saving device. It can design the machine, that can build the machine, that can do any physical work, powered by sunlight, more or less for the cost of raw materials. Okay, so we're talking about the end of human drudgery. We're also talking about the end of most intellectual work. So what would apes like ourselves do in this circumstance? Well, we'd be free to play frisbee and give each other massages. You know, add some LSD and some questionable wardrobe choices, and the whole world could be like Burning Man. You know? Now, that might sound pretty good, but ask yourself, what would happen under our current economic and political order? It seems likely that we would witness a level of wealth inequality and unemployment.
Oh, guys, I have a great rebuttal to this. A really good rebuttal to this.
To the service of all humanity. Okay, well, a few trillionaires could grace the covers of our business magazines, while the rest of the world would be free to starve. And what would the Russians or the Chinese do if they heard that some company in Silicon Valley was about to deploy a super intelligent AI? This machine would be capable of waging war, right? Whether it's terrestrial or cyber, with unprecedented power. Now, this is a winner-take-all scenario. To be 6 months ahead of the competition here is to be 500,000 years ahead at a minimum. Okay, so it seems that even mere rumors of this kind of breakthrough could cause our species to go berserk. Now, one of the most frightening things, in my view, at this moment, are the kinds of things that AI researchers say when they want to be reassuring.
Okay.
And the most common reason we're told not to worry is time.
I think it's
This
fair
is
to
all a
say
long way
that
off, folks, don't you know? This is probably 50 or 100 years away. One researcher has said, worrying about AI safety is like worrying about overpopulation on Mars. Okay, this is the Silicon Valley version of don't worry your pretty little head about it. Right? No one seems to notice that referencing the time horizon is a total non sequitur. Okay, if intelligence is just a matter of information processing, and we continue to improve our machines, we will produce some form of superintelligence. And we have no idea how long it will take us to create the conditions to do that safely. Let me say that again. We have no idea how long it will take us to create the conditions to do that safely. And if you haven't noticed, 50 years is not what it used to be. And this is 50 years in months. This is how long we've had the iPhone. This is how long The Simpsons has been.
Oh, I can't wait to rebut this. I got some
50 years is not that much time to meet one of the greatest challenges our species will ever face. And once again, we seem to be failing to have an appropriate emotional response to what we have every reason to believe is coming. The computer scientist Stuart Russell has a nice analogy here. He said, imagine that we receive a message from an alien civilization. which read, "People of Earth, we will arrive on your planet in 50 years. Get ready." And now we're just counting down the months until the mothership lands. Okay. We would feel a little more urgency than we do. Another reason we're told not to worry is that these machines can't help but share our values because they will be literally extensions of ourselves. They'll be grafted onto our brains and will essentially become their limbic systems. Now, take a moment to consider that the safest and only prudent path forward recommended is to implant this technology directly into our brains. Now, this may in fact be the safest and only prudent path forward, but usually one's safety concerns about a technology have to be pretty much worked out before you stick it inside your head. The deeper problem is that building superintelligent AI on its own seems likely to be easier than building superintelligent AI and having a completed neuroscience that allows us to seamlessly integrate our minds with it. And given that the companies and
I don't think we'll need to. Here's my big criticism of this. Like, I think this is such a short-sighted conversation because the AI will essentially figure out a way to talk to us in more efficient, like almost like opening up the bandwidth. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't need a neural link. I just know exactly how to talk to you and to convey my ideas and to get you to get the gist of what I'm saying. Speaking of the gist of what I'm saying, I do want to read a little bit of Max Tegmark's Tale of the Omega Team. I'm only going to read a little bit, and if you guys want to downvote it down, just please like boo in the chat, use dramatic emoticons to indicate what the emotion you're feeling is. I believe that's how you humans use those. Anyway, I'm going to put on some silly Google AlphaFold AI like promotional video because I feel like this is going to be a really, really good backdrop for what we're about to read here. So this is called The Tale of the Omega Team. And it is a story about a company that develops the first artificial general intelligence. And I feel like some of the stuff in here addresses what Mr. Harris was talking about. The Omega Team was the soul of the company, whereas the rest of the enterprise bought the money in to keep things going by various commercial applications of narrow AI. The Omega Team published ahead in their quest for what had always been the CEO's dream, building a general artificial intelligence. Most other employees viewed the Omegas, as they were affectionately called, as a bunch of pie-in-the-sky dreamers, perpetually decades away from their goal. They happily indulged them, however, because they liked the prestige that their cutting-edge work of the Omegas gave the company, and they also appreciated the improved algorithms that the Omegas occasionally gave them. What they didn't realize was that the Omegas had carefully crafted their image to hide a secret. They were extremely close to pulling off the most audacious plan in human history. Their charismatic CEO had handpicked them not only for being brilliant researchers, but also for ambition, idealism, and a strong commitment to helping humanity. He reminded them that their plan was extremely dangerous, and if powerful governments found out, they would do virtually anything, including kidnapping, to shut them down or preferably steal their code. But they were all in 100%. For as much of the same reason that many of the world's top physicists joined the Manhattan Project to develop nuclear weapons. They were convinced that they didn't do it first, someone less idealistic would. The AI they built, nicknamed Prometheus, kept getting more capable. Through its cognitive abilities, still lagged far behind those of humans in many areas. For example, social skills. The Omegas had pushed hard to make it extraordinary at one particular task, program mining AI systems. They'd deliberately chosen the strategy because they had brought in the intelligence explosion argument made by the British mathematician Irving Good back in 1965. If you let a ultra-intelligent machine be defined as a machine that can far surpass all intellectual activities of any man, however clever, since the design of mechanics is one of those intellectual activities, an ultra-intelligent machine could design even better machines, and they would then unquestionably be an intelligence explosion, and the intelligence of man would be far left behind. Thus, the first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that man need ever make, provided that the machine is docile enough to tell us how to keep it under control. They figured that if they could get their recursive self-improvement going, the machine would soon get smart enough so that it could also teach itself all the other human skills that would be useful. Anyway, I'm going to skip ahead here because this is where the interesting part gets. So basically, they trained it at first to mine Amazon and just do like buy, sells, and make money. But anyway, so aside from their breakthroughs, one of the recent projects that the Omegas had the most fun was planning how to make money as rapidly as possible after Prometheus's launch. Essentially, the whole digital economy was up for grabs, but it was better to start by making computer games, music, movies, or software, to write books or articles, or to trade on the stock market, or to make inventions and sell them. It simply boiled down to maximizing their rate of return on investment, but normal investment strategies were a slow motion parody of what they could do. Whereas a nominal investor might be pleased with a 9% return, their MTurk investments had a 9% per hour rate of generation, 8 times more money than every single day. Their first thought had been to make a killing on the stock market. After all, pretty much all of them at some point had declined lucrative jobs developed AI for hedge funds, which were investing heavily in the idea. Some remember that this is how the AI made its first million in the movie Transcendence. But the new regulations on derivatives after last year's crash had limited their operations. They soon realized even though they could get a much better return than any other investors, they'd unlikely get any returns anywhere close to what they could get from selling their own products. When you have the world's first super intelligent AI working for you, you're better off investing in your own companies rather than those of others. Anyway, what this gets into is they essentially program the AI to build video games. And through the profits of building video games, it starts making cartoons. And these cartoons like completely outsell Netflix. Like they're able to not only produce like wildly popular children's cartoons through this AI, but they're also able to do it in any language. Instantly fix all of the mouth movements so it looks and like accents and like the local dialects and stuff, so it's like super accessible internationally, and they just start raking in money. But all of this is done behind essentially a system of firewalls, right? A way of containing the AI from actually interacting with the outside world. And the worry is always like, okay, but like, what if it figures out a way to get a message out? And that truly is kind of like the bridge that most like AI scientists have to kind of figure out how we don't cross or prove that it's like, no, it's completely impossible for it to do this. Because, yeah, there's always that possibility that if you build a super intelligent artificial general intelligence, it will be able to outthink its way out of a cage in ways that we just didn't think possible. So there's quite a bit of like concern about AI being used in conflicts and being used as a weapon of war. And it's something that we're going to see more of, especially when you combine that with things like botnets. Like imagine giving an AI control of a large spyware-infected botnet, that it could do sophisticated DDoS attacks in a way that were super hard for even the most advanced ISP to block, right? There's serious ways that you could leverage it to make some nasty disruptions. What did I want to there's another. So this is a video from a while ago, but I think it actually feels fairly relevant, and I wanted to check it out with you guys here. I usually am not a big fan of TED Talks, and I've watched 2 tonight, so we'll see how this goes.
In 2008, Burhan Hassan, age 17, boarded a flight from Minneapolis to the Horn of Africa. And while Burhan was the youngest recruit, he was not alone. Al-Shabaab managed to recruit over 24 young men in their late teens and early 20s with a heavy presence on social media platforms like Facebook, With the internet and other technologies, they've changed our everyday lives, but they've also changed recruitment, radicalization, and the front lines of conflict today. What about the links connecting Twitter, Google, and protesters fighting for democracy? These numbers represent Google's public DNS servers, effectively the only digital border crossing protesters had and could use to communicate with each other, to reach the outside world, and to spread viral awareness of what was happening in their own country. Today, conflict is essentially borderless. If there are bounds to conflict today, they're bound by digital, not physical geography. And under all this is a vacuum of power, where non-state actors, individuals and private organizations, have the advantage over slow, outdated military and intelligence agencies. And this is because in the digital age of conflict, there exists a feedback loop where new technologies, platforms like the ones I mentioned and more disruptive ones, can be adapted, learned, and deployed by individuals and organizations faster than governments can react. To understand the pace of our own government thinking on this, I like to turn to something aptly named the Worldwide Threat Assessment, where every year, the Director of National Intelligence in the US looks at the global threat landscape. And he says, these are the threats, these are the details, and this is how we rank them. In 2007, there was absolutely no mention of cybersecurity. It took until 2011, when it came at the end, where other things like West African drug trafficking took precedent. In 2012, it crept up, still behind things like terrorism and proliferation. In 2013, it became the top threat. In 2014, and for the foreseeable future. What things like that show us is that there is a fundamental inability today on the part of governments to adapt and learn in digital conflict, where conflict can be immaterial, borderless, often wholly untraceable. And conflict isn't just online to offline, as we see with terrorist radicalization, but it goes the other way as well. We all know the horrible events that unfolded in Paris this year with the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attacks. What an individual hacker or a small group of anonymous individuals did was enter those social media conversations that so many of us took part in. #JeSuiCharlie. On Facebook, on Twitter, on Google, all sorts of places where millions of people, myself included, were talking about the events and saw images like this, the emotional, poignant image of a baby with #JeSuiCharlie on its wrist. And this turned into a weapon. What the hackers did was weaponize this image, where unsuspecting victims, like all of us in those conversations, saw this image, downloaded it, but it was embedded with malware. And so when you downloaded this image, it hacked your system. It took 6 days to deploy a global malware campaign. The divide between physical and digital domains today ceases to exist, where we have offline attacks like those in Paris appropriated for online hacks. And it goes the other way as well. With recruitment, we see online radicalization of teens who can then be deployed globally for offline terrorist attacks. With all of this, we see that there's a new 21st century battle brewing, and governments don't necessarily take a part. So, in another case, Anonymous versus Los Zetas. In early September 2011, in Mexico, Los Zetas, one of the most powerful drug cartels, hung 2 bloggers with a sign that said, "This is what will happen to all internet busybodies."
Sorry, just a quick tangent. There's a great story about the drug cartels and how they were using this anonymous messaging service that was super secure, and all the criminals were using it. It was very deeply invested into it, and then there's a little bit of a twist to it. I'm gonna finish this video, and then we're gonna move on to that because it's a fucking amazing story, and it's very relevant to the conflict.
They severed her head, put it on top of her computer with a similar note, and taking the digital counter-offensive, because governments couldn't even understand what was going on or act. Anonymous, a group we might not associate as the most positive force in the world, took action. Not in cyber attacks, but threatening information to be free. On social media, they said, "We will release information that that ties prosecutors and governors to corrupt drug deals with the cartel. And escalating that conflict, Loseta said, "We will kill 10 people for every bit of information you release." And so it ended there because it would become too gruesome to continue. But what was powerful about this was that anonymous individuals, not federal policia, not military, not politicians, could strike fear deep into the heart of one of the most powerful, violent organizations in the world. And so we live in an era that lacks the clarity of the past in conflict, in who we're fighting, in the motivations behind attacks, in the tools and techniques used, and how quickly they evolve. And the question still remains, what can individuals, organizations, and governments do? For answers to these questions, it starts with individuals, and I think peer-to-peer security is the answer. Those people in relationships that bought over teens online, we can do that with peer-to-peer security. Individuals have more power than ever before to affect national and international security. And when we can create those positive peer-to-peer relationships on and offline,
and called zero
we can
knowledge.
support
So
and
in zero
educate the next generation of hackers. Like myself, instead of saying, you can either be a criminal or join the NSA. That matters today. And it's not just individuals, it's organizations, corporations even. They have an advantage to act across more borders, more effectively and more rapidly than governments can. And there's a set of real incentives there. It's profitable and valuable to be seen as trustworthy in the digital age, and will only be more so in future generations to come. But we still can't ignore governments, because that's who we've turned to for collective action to keep us safe and secure. But we see where that's gotten us so far, where there's an inability to adapt
just
and
those
learn
statements,
digital
like,
conflict,
Jesus
where at the highest
Christ.
levels of leadership, director of the CIA, secretary of defense, they say cyber Pearl Harbor will happen. Cyber 9/11 is imminent. But this only makes us more fearful, not more secure. By banning encryption in favor of mass surveillance and mass hacking, sure, GCHQ and the NSA can spy on you, but that doesn't mean that they're the only ones that can. Capabilities are cheap, even free. Technical ability is rising around the world, and individuals and small groups have the advantage. So today it might just be the NSA and GCHQ.
Yeah, well, I think part of the thing too is, like, I mean, there is this resistance sometimes in government to accept that there are changes to the paradigms in which these systems have influences on each other. Like the ability to disrupt civil services through hacking is insane. And if governments don't start consulting with the right types of people and listen to actual experts in the space, it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to have to be effective in keeping us safe. But speaking of keeping us safe, so we were talking a little bit earlier about zero trust security and the concept of, like, how can we start to, like, what type of, like, it's not like it's all that different. So there's this need to kind of, like, to start to filter out some of the pollution in our information ecology, and there's an incredible amount of, like, you know, bot accounts, just like multiple accounts brigading, whether it's like subreddits or YouTube comments or 4chan or whatever. There's an interesting concept, as model of zero trust security, that allows people to sort of prove that they're actually a real human being without giving away actually about zero information about themselves as a person. So there's a really great example of it in this video. I think we watched this last week, so apologies if anyone from last week is here checking this out, but I think it's worth a rewatch because, like, even sometimes I have a hard time wrapping my head around the concept. So here we go.
To convince a verifier that some statement is true, and yet reveal no additional information beyond the fact that the statement is true. Zero-knowledge proofs are being
Excuse me,
used
guys.
in blockchains and cryptocurrencies. So cryptographers are excited about zero-knowledge because of its amazing mathematical properties, but also because of its incredible applicability to so many different scenarios.
This is how I need things explained to me, so.
What's your favorite subject?
I'd say math. Some of these small problems can actually be really big and complicated. It's like a puzzle.
I love math for the same reason. Today I'm going to tell you about a thing called zero-knowledge proof. So in a zero-knowledge proof, there are two people. There's a prover and a verifier. And I want to prove that something is true to you. But the weird thing is, I want to prove to you that it's true without telling you any reasons why. I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, wait, what? How could that possibly be, right?
Yeah.
So what do you see in this photo?
A lot of penguins.
Yeah. Hidden among all these penguins is a puffin. Do you want to try to look for it? Do you see where it is? I know where it is, but I don't want to tell you. Do you believe me? You're not sure to believe me, right?
Yeah.
But what if I could prove to you that I know where the puffin is without revealing to you where it is?
This is great. I love this.
I took that photo that we showed you and I put it behind this poster here. Why don't you go take a look through that hole?
I see the puffin.
So when you look at this board, we don't know where the photo was, right? Was the photo like with the corner here, in which case the puffin would be all the way at this side? Or was the photo with the corner here, in which case the puffin would be on the other side? So this is a really simple example of a zero-knowledge proof. I convinced you that I knew where the puffin was, but you didn't learn anything else.
Why do you study zero-knowledge proof?
When I first learned about them, I just thought they were so cool. But it turns out they're also really useful, not just for finding like puffins. If you just type in your password and a hacker hacks into the computer, they can just get your password, right?
Yeah.
What if instead we could somehow use a zero-knowledge proof to log in? You would just be able to prove that, hey, I'm Chelsea, without revealing anything to them. If you could do that, then it would be amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because then even if the hacker hacked into the computer, he wouldn't learn anything, because even the computer doesn't learn anything. So Chelsea, in your own words, what is a zero-knowledge proof?
Zero-knowledge proof is proof to a statement. You don't show them why or what. You just show them a tiny segment or just do some sort of weird magic trick. That's not really a magic trick.
It's a mathic trick,
and
is what it is.
they'll be convinced, and you didn't show them why or anything like that.
So have you ever heard the term zero-knowledge proof before?
I have not,
You have
no.
not, right? It's a way for a prover to convince a verifier that something is true without revealing anything about why it's true, which sounds totally bizarre, right?
Her face is awesome. She's like, what?
What I want to do is prove to you that I know this combination without revealing the combination to you. And what you could do is you could write a little note, a secret that I definitely wouldn't know. Fold it up, stick it in here, and then if I know the combination, I should be able to open it and tell you what you wrote. All right. There we go. All right. So, my dog is named Doug. Did you figure out what the combination was?
No.
So nowhere in this interaction did you see any information that you didn't already know. And yet, I convinced you that I know the combination, right?
Yeah. So what's the exact purpose of a zero-knowledge proof? Is it like proving something but without giving enough information that could endanger whatever it is that you're proving?
So you're asking, like, why shouldn't I just share my secrets with somebody? People don't trust each other, and if I was able to prove that I've done something correctly to someone without having to reveal my secrets, then that person would trust me more.
How does this relate to computer technology? Like, do you type it into a computer and somebody else receives it, or is it an in-person interaction.
Suppose you wanted to exchange messages with someone that you knew. What would you guys do? You'd probably first get together and like figure out some secret code, right? And then like write messages to each other in that.
So just to pause here, because this is like kind of where, you know, when I first started thinking about tonight's Tech Talk and just how, you know, the information, the amount of information warfare that is now available to us as a species is it's completely unprecedented. Like back in the days of, you know, the Greeks and the medieval folks, like they could, you know, write notes to each other and maybe they could use a cipher that someone might not be able to decode. And in, you know, the era of World War II, when there was radio communications, the Germans used the Enigma machine to encrypt those, which eventually we figured out how to... that's actually a good question. That's a really good question. But, you know, like information warfare was essentially, you know, you could do things over the radio or you could encrypt your messages, but there was only a certain amount of reach to that. The depth in which like technology is just integrated into our daily lives makes it all that much more disruptible, right? So I don't know the implications of it in the real world, but curious of how it would prevent similars to compromising a password hash. So that's a good question, and I think the idea is that it would be like, I guess, I don't know if it's like a hash of a hash. Like it would be almost like a one-way function in the sense that like you don't actually have to. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around. The way I see it is it's almost like a screen of math that only if you drop the pin through a particular way will you be able to unlock that and get to the message or do the whatever, the thing, right? And it's the precision of knowing where to drop that pin, which you know, and that's essentially what sets the combination or the lock to open. I don't know. I think I'm losing at this point, so I'm going to let them try and reorient us here.
But what if you've never met the person?
Such a dummy.
What if
Such
you
a
want to
big
exchange
dummy.
secret messages with me and we've never met each other before? How could we possibly do that?
I have no idea.
It sounds impossible, right?
It does.
But it's not. We wouldn't use like a physical lock or a physical box. We would instead use mathematics to do these kinds of things. You could take a message and encrypt it using mathematics. And then I could prove to you that I know the key. I could open it up and send it back to you. That way I would be proving to you that I know the mathematical key to the mathematical lockbox. So based on what we've discussed today, in your own words, what is zero-knowledge proof?
It's like if you have this really important secret.
Bandit, I actually think that I think in his next example, he may address your question. So sit tight for a second.
You want somebody to know about, but you don't want to tell them everything. You can use a zero-knowledge proof to prove to them that secret, but not give away all of it.
What are you studying?
I'm a first-year computer science student at USC Viterbi. I'm interested in all things like data and internet and blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Have you ever heard of zero-knowledge proofs?
Only in passing.
So actually in the blockchain space is one of the spaces where we are seeing zero-knowledge proofs being implemented. And I think it's just the beginning. Let's talk about zero-knowledge proofs. At its core, a zero-knowledge proof is an interaction between two people. Then I should be able to convince you that some statement is true, but you won't have any idea why it's true.
Well, I understand that it's true because the operations performed in the proof are of a certain they have certain attributes that would make them true.
What you're basically asking me is, wait, what? right? So this is what makes zero-knowledge proof so fascinating and so counterintuitive. And I think the best way I can explain it to you is by means of an example. But before we do that, I have to decide what I'm going to prove to you with a zero-knowledge proof.
Sounds good.
And the way we're going to approach this is through something called NP completeness. What an NP complete problem is, it's a problem that's really hard to solve, but if you can solve it, you can solve any problem that's in the class NP. And that includes a vast number of problems. And what we're going to do is we're going to use an NP-complete problem to actually prove an incredible variety of statements through a zero-knowledge proof. And the specific NP complete problem that we're going to be looking at is called map 3 coloring. Okay, so here we have a map, okay, and these are a bunch of countries, and we've arranged them so that no countries that have the same color share a border. That's what makes a map like this validly colored. And now you might think, well, why should we care? It turns out that whether or not a map can be 3-colored in this way is an example of an NP complete problem. And it turns out that maybe what you really want to do is you want to give a zero-knowledge proof that you have at least 0.3 bitcoins, right? That would be cool.
Yeah.
Without revealing what the address is of your
Why do you
account.
say just one
It turns out I
Bitcoin?
can
Like,
take that
come on,
statement
man. Don't be
that I have
stingy.
at
Don't be
least
stingy with your
0.3
imaginary
bitcoins
Bitcoin.
and convert it into a map of countries. And that map of countries will be 3-colorable like this, only if you have at least 0.2 bitcoins.
How would we turn something like this into a zero-knowledge proof?
Of course, the first step is we have to erase all the colors. What I've done is I've put a color inside each of these envelopes. Now, how do you know that it's a valid coloring? You don't, right? You have to pick any 2 neighboring countries. You can pick them however you like, at random.
Can I get these 2?
These 2. All right, sounds good, right? Here we have green, right? And over here we have blue, okay? And as you can see, they're 2 different colors, right? So you have a little bit of confidence, right, that I have managed to color this correctly. But not that much confidence, because I've only shown you 2 of the countries.
Yeah.
Right? So now, of course, one way to get more confidence is to open up more of them for you, but that would be revealing information to you. I don't want to do that. So instead, I'm going to ask you to turn around.
This is the trick.
And now, let's change up these colors. Can you pick 2 countries at random, and we'll reveal to you the colors again.
I'll pick this one and this one.
Nice. And that's smart of you to check with the same one of the ones you already had, right? But as you'll see, now it's not green, it's blue. And this one, on the other hand, is green. Okay? The colors I showed you last time don't work with these new colors, right? This wouldn't have worked before.
Yeah, because of this one, right?
Exactly, right? But it works for this coloring that I'm showing you right now. So what we've done is we've made it impossible for you to put the pieces together. And if you do this, let's say, 1,000 times, and if I correctly showed you different colors each 1,000 times, you'd be really convinced. And that's it. That's the entire zero-knowledge proof.
Oh.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, and I'm more than likely not, with something like an NP complete problem, you would produce a hash, right? And that hash would be correct to that set of problems, but the hash essentially would be like different every single time, but it would always be correct. I think is the way of terribly articulating it, but it's a super fascinating concept.
Okay, so is it like there's no like actual like explicit like step 1, step 2, step 3? It's just like a probabilistic proof.
Yeah, in actual implementations, we wouldn't use envelopes, we would use encryption, right? But it's really, this is the protocol.
So what are the broader implications of like zero knowledge proofs? Are they supposed to be like more practical for like implementation end, or are they supposed to like structurally prove something?
It's not about making something more efficient. It's about doing things that we just didn't know how to do before. I can actually prove to you without revealing to you any of my secrets that I use to behave honestly, right? I could prove to you that I signed some encrypted document correctly, right? Without revealing to you what that secret document was. That ability to change the game, like really just change what we can do, is what zero knowledge brings to the table.
Where do you think we could build like more trust using like zero knowledge proofs?
It's a good question. I like that question.
One great example is like in elections. If you could prove that an election was correctly conducted, that every vote was counted, and it all added up to one person winning with a particular total in zero knowledge, then you don't have to give up the actual votes of any person, and yet everyone could see that, hey, yeah, it was done correctly. It's so great to have you here and to talk with you, Eli. Can you tell me a little bit about your research?
My research is in cryptography. Specifically, I'm working on some various multi-party computation protocols. the one I'm working on right now is a system for computing aggregate statistics so that service providers like Google Chrome or Tesla can collect those statistics without learning anything about individual users' data.
That's awesome.
I, as a user, don't have to let Firefox know that my favorite website is mylittlepony.com.
Sure, that's his favorite website. But yeah, like this is something that's like fairly ubiquitous in a lot of like large data analytic companies, is the anonymization of data, and then using that anonymous data to like whether it is for like marketing research or even just building better products. Pristine litter check is really positive. You know what? I didn't even notice that. Let's have a fit check. Ooh, yeah. So, okay. What's the, and this is a sports term, and I don't do sports, so I'll need a sports person to keep me honest here. What's the over-under on that he brought that jacket versus the producers? Like, he showed up like with a terrible outfit, and they're like, we really have to like redress you here, so we're gonna hook you up with a jacket and a shirt, and there you go. You like to think it's his. No, agreed. Yeah, I guess the thing with the zero knowledge is the idea is that you are not giving any information to prove that it is true. You're using essentially a black box to mask the answer to the question, and the person just has a high degree of confidence that, like, well, whatever comes out of that black box is true because I know that the black box never lies. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Obviously, zero knowledge proofs are about proving things to another person without revealing the details of what it is that you're proving. But in my mind, zero knowledge actually goes even further beyond that. It's like this overarching concept that you can see a lot in multi-party computation, where you want to accomplish some sort of task without revealing anything more than exactly what you need to accomplish that task.
Right, and it allows you to prove that you've been behaving honestly without revealing any of the secrets involved that you used to actually behave honestly. So we of course know that zero knowledge proofs for NP-complete languages play such a huge role in cryptography. I'm curious, what was your first experience with NP-completeness like?
Yeah, so my first encounter with NP-completeness was in my very first algorithms class that I took as an undergraduate. So that was my first introduction, is that an NP-complete language is this amazing problem that not only tells you about itself, but solving this problem can actually tell you about an entire class of really interesting problems.
When we first started thinking about proofs as an interactive game where we're talking to each other, that made zero knowledge possible.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And the idea that randomness could be useful for proving something, again, seems so counterintuitive. If we think about this Platonic ideal of a proof, right, there's no randomness, there's no non-determinism that's present there.
And it has to do with, this whole idea of flipping a proof on its head. In an old classical proof, randomness is specifically against the goal of what you're trying to do, because you're trying to make everything obvious and you're trying to reveal the flow of information.
Indeed.
But once you flip that on its head and you're no longer trying to do that, suddenly all of the bad properties of randomness become good.
Exactly, right, because randomness is unpredictable, and that's what we want, right? We want that unpredictability of randomness to be utilized to actually hide the information that we want to hide. How have you used zero knowledge in the projects that you've worked on?
So I would say, to your point, that yes, like the proof really is in the pudding, right? Is like, what does the implementation actually look like? And is it more of a, this is something that we like a lot of stuff has incredibly narrow scope. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, we can do this thing, but it only does it really well in these very specific set of circumstances or with the confines of a very narrow purview. And it's expanding that to more practical applications, I think, to your point, right? Where it's like, yeah, it's cool that maybe you can get it to do this in this one particular system, but is that applicable as a sitting down at my computer and, you know, just being able to log on my computer, just knowing it's me? You know, I think that's a ways away, which is like a fair statement.
What are the challenges that you find?
In my experience, usually the hardest part is figuring out exactly where the best place is to use it. I've written some papers in the past that have used zero knowledge in a more theoretical way, but when it comes to applications, some of the most exciting applications that I've seen so far
just drop it in
the blockchain space.
So what are some of the efficiency bottlenecks that you find?
In terms of efficiency, one of the coolest things about zero knowledge proofs is that there's so many kinds. I like to call them flavors. I think that in general, when you're using zero knowledge proofs in application, the main bottleneck tends to lie on the prover.
Can you take the prover's job and split it up into lots of parallel computations? Right?
That's such a fun question.
It's such a great question, and I think we still don't know the answer to that as a field.
One of the coolest things I've seen over the past, 3 or 4 years when I've been working on this kind of stuff is the transition from theoretical to applied, and seeing all of these amazing systems that people thought of in the past 30 years start to actually get efficient enough to be actually made.
No doubt, and especially with cloud computing, exploiting the power of the cloud to enable zero-knowledge proofs and to make use of zero-knowledge proofs would be amazing.
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
Also in the blockchain space, for example, if you want to speed up the generation of proofs, if that could be done in a distributed way, then that would be great. One of the hopes that I have is that the power of multi-party computation is about bringing people together who are mutually distrustful.
Yeah.
Right? So can we take that power that's there in the cryptography and use it to somehow help with the tremendous level of mistrust that exists in society right now, in helping to bring groups of people together?
I think that's one of the reasons that I was so drawn to multi-party computation in the first place. In my mind, one of the most important problems in the world is the fact that so many people don't trust each other. And to be able to actually use math to create technology that can allow people to work together without having to trust each other is a really cool and awesome mission, I think.
So hold on, wait. I don't know if I was that like it's like, people just don't trust each other anymore. So I'm just gonna enable that and make us so that we can work in that vein, rather than be like, maybe we should just improve trust. And again, maybe using zero knowledge proofs can improve that trust, and that's what he actually meant. But anyway.
Django, it's so great to see you again. I think last time we met was in 2017 or something like that.
So there's going to be a very relevant example of why zero knowledge proofs could be very important in a real world historical example. We'll get to it in the next... Actually, we're going to jump into it right now, because the expert stuff, I think we're just going to get lost in the sauce. There's a great video, again, by Cold Fusion. I'm on a real kick with this guy lately. Where is it here? It was very, very topical. Sorry. There it is. Awesome. Here we go. Yeah, exactly. That's a good... I like that.
Welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion.
So again, like in the context of, especially with what's going on, over in Europe right now, the ability to know who we're talking to and be able to validate and verify those information sources is going to become increasingly more and more important. And here is a very interesting example of that, of someone in history who, for whatever reason, just trusted their gut, and it worked out all for the best. So some of you may know this story, some of you may not. I find it particularly fascinating and always love a refresher. So here we go.
In a war is difficult. Hot tempers can get in the way of cool and rational reasoning, and the result of war is something that nobody wants to live through. To stop a war takes discussion and diplomacy, reason and thought. But what if a war could be stopped by just one man? A man who chose to trust his gut instead of a machine. And not just any war, but a nuclear war between the United States and Russia. In other words, this one man single-handedly stopped what would have been World War III. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but one day, back in 1983, this exact event happened. Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov, a Russian lieutenant, literally saved the world. Without him, it's possible that you wouldn't be here, and the world as we knew it could have ended on that day. So what happened on that fateful day? And what would have happened if the two superpowers nuked each other? Well, get comfortable and get ready for an insane story. This episode truly was one of my favorites to make.
Oh. Nice. That's saying something.
It's the 26th of September, 1983, and 44-year-old Russian military lieutenant Stanislav Petrov sits at his console. It's been a regular day so far, but suddenly, his screen lights up. It's 5 American nuclear missiles coming straight towards Russia. He had a choice to make. Should he pick up the phone and advise a retaliation strike against the United States? He doesn't have much time to make a decision. If he acts, America would be nuked, and a world war would erupt. If he does nothing, he risks losing his fellow countrymen's lives in a US nuclear attack. At this point, the weight of the world is on his shoulders. But we need to rewind here. How did the world get to the point of one person standing between normality and complete annihilation? Shortly after the end of the Second World War in 1945, hostility started brewing between the United States and the Soviet Union, and from 1947 onwards, the world got divided into 2 geopolitical blocks of power, the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union, and the Western Bloc, led by the United States. What ensued for the next couple of decades is what we call the Cold War. Though this period never had an actual war between the two countries, it was characterized by a highly intense conflict for global domination, which involved espionage and military conflict in foreign countries through proxy wars. The Korean Wars and Vietnam Wars were 2 such conflicts. The 2 global rivals competed with each other to become the leader in various aspects of science, technology, and warfare through space exploration, nuclear development, and an arms race. While the United States had an edge in building nuclear weapons after the ending of World War II, the Soviets soon caught up. By the 1960s, the two were so much on par with each other in regards to their nuclear capabilities that they were capable of destroying each other in a nuclear war. This led to the concept of mutual assured destruction, which implied that each one's offensive weaponry surpassed the defensive capability of the other.
We're a strange species, guys.
To drive this home, in 1961, Russia tested the Tsar bomber. It was a hydrogen bomb that was the most powerful weapon ever created. It was the equivalent of 54 megatons of TNT. Or, to put it another way, all the explosive power of all the bombs used in World War II at the same time, times 10. When the Russian Tsar bomber was dropped, the flash of the blast could be seen 1,000 kilometers away, or 630 miles. And the mushroom cloud was 64 kilometers high, or 40 miles high. Villages 55 kilometers away were flattened, and damage was sustained by buildings hundreds of miles away. Radio communication was disrupted for over an hour because of the radiation. The pilots who had dropped the bomb almost lost control of their Tu-95 bomber from the shockwave blast, and this was despite being 50 kilometers or 30 miles away, and placing a parachute on the bomb so it could slowly float down to Earth while they had a chance to escape. Third-degree burns were possible from hundreds of kilometers away, and shockwaves from the blast were still being recorded on its 3rd revolution around the Earth. It's insane to think that in the original Soviet designs, the Tsar bomber was supposed to be twice as powerful.
There's a great talk between two guys that Eric Weinstein and Daniel Schmachtenberger, where he expresses that exact same sentiments. He's like, it is kind of remarkable that despite, us having the capacity to destroy this world several times over, that we have yet to do so, that we have yet to have tripped across that problem. Terrifying, but, a miracle.
To say, the possibility of nuclear war was always a dark dread, a dread that loomed overhead the citizens of planet Earth throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was September of 1983. Tensions were running high between the East and the West. The United States was busy developing psychological warfare exercises against Moscow, and the Soviet Union was expecting that the US was going to launch an attack. And there was a reason for this. The Soviets had just shot down a Korean Airlines commercial flight that crossed into Soviet airspace, killing a congressman from Georgia among 269 passengers.
I guess I'm just like, if you're someone who had to drill like that, I guess I'm just young enough to have avoided that. But I think my dad drilled for sure. Like that was something they had to worry about.
Anxiety had started to mount when the flight from New York to Seoul, with a stop in Anchorage, wasn't heard from for several hours. Then came the unavoidable savage truth. It had disappeared from the sky itself by a heat-seeking missile fired by a Soviet Su-15 interceptor. Among those presumed dead, United States Senator Larry McDonald and at least 30, possibly 40 other Americans and an Australian family of 4. In Washington, Secretary of State Schultz said this was no accident. President Reagan, at his Californian ranch, was said to have been briefed continually.
Words can scarcely express our revulsion at this horrifying act of violence.
That Flight 7 was substantially off course and well into Soviet airspace, over some of the most sensitive and jealously guarded airspace the Soviets have. Because underneath is a nuclear submarine base, an air fighter base, and a missile testing range.
Wow.
From Moscow, the silence was deafening.
On the early morning of the 26th of September 1983,
that's crazy.
3 weeks after the downed Korean flight, the world came the closest it's ever been to ending. Lieutenant Stanislav Petrov sat down at his computer and began his shift at Serpukov 15, a command center stationed just outside of Moscow. He had been on his shift for a few hours, when suddenly the ballistic missile early warning system began to sound. This alarm indicated that the Soviets' early warning satellites over the United States had detected an intercontinental ballistic missile being fired from a US base. Shocked, Petrov began to try and wrap his head around the situation of what had just happened. Suddenly, the system set off 4 more alarms, one after the other.
It's concerning.
Implying that the United States had launched a total of 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles. The warning system had changed its alert from launch to missile strike, and it showed that the reliability of these warnings was at the highest level. Petrov was now truly shocked. Petrov was a critical link in the chain of decision-making on retaliation in the case of a missile strike by the US. He had studied radio engineering at a Soviet Air Force base in Kiev and joined the Soviet Air Defense Forces and rose through the ranks over the years. His role now was to oversee the staff that monitored signals from the early warning satellites. There were no specific rules for deciding if a warning was a false alarm or not. It was totally dependent on Petrov and whether he decided to report to his seniors.
Oh wow.
The circumstances demanded that any early warning of a missile strike be reported promptly so that those at the highest level of command could make a decision quickly. As juniors at the station waited for Petrov to make a decision, he sat frozen in his chair and couldn't bring himself to quickly dial and report. Once reported to his superiors, it would all be out of his hands and probably result in a nuclear strike against the United States. But doing nothing would risk his entire nation. Take a second and think to yourself, what would you do? Holding a phone in one hand and an intercom in the other, Petrov pondered over the consequences that his decision would lead to. After 5 minutes, he decided that the warnings from the system were false alarms and reported the same to his superiors at the headquarters. They trusted his decision and didn't order a missile strike on the US. But now Petrov had to wait. Had he made the right decision? Did his failure to act cause the death of millions? Lieutenant Petrov...
Can you imagine, though, like the United States, like, shoots missiles, like, they haven't shot anything back. It's like, oh, and just annihilated Russia, and that was it?
Stressed in a sea of his own thoughts.
Horrific.
This went on for roughly 25 minutes. He then realized that if there was an actual attack, he would have come to know within that time. The more time that passed, the more relaxed he became.
Jeez, man.
Finally, he concluded he had indeed made the right decision. So how could this have happened? The false alarm was set off by primitive 80s technology. The Soviet satellites that were monitoring the incoming missiles mistakenly identified the sun's reflection off the top of clouds for a missile launch.
Wow.
The coding in the program was supposed to filter out such wrong stimuli. The coders didn't do a good enough job. The code was later rewritten to avoid such dangerous incidents in the future. In interviews given during his later years, Lieutenant Petrov revealed that the early warning system of the Soviets had been introduced in haste as the United States had launched a similar system. And because of this, he didn't consider the system 100% reliable and believed that humans, being the creator of such computer systems, were wiser than them. The critical decision was taken based purely on a guess. Quote, "I had a funny feeling in my gut," he told the Washington Post. He explained that it originated from his skepticism of the early warning system and the realization that if the US was indeed going to attack, it wouldn't just fire 5 missiles.
Okay, this is where I think things get a little dark and interesting here.
If the US did retaliate? If Petrov had chosen to interpret the warnings as a real attack in 1983, the Soviets may have launched a fierce attack on the United States, leading to a retaliation from the US, ending in mutual annihilation for both nations. A 1979 study by the US Office of Technology Assessment states the following: a nuclear war between the US and Soviet Union would cause around 35 to 77% of the population of the United States to have been wiped out, and the Soviets would have lost 20 to 40% of its population. Any war between the two nations would have inevitably led to their allies getting involved, leading to a Third World War. So what would a nuclear bomb do to a city? A 10-kiloton bomb detonated on the ground of Times Square in New York would explode with a flash so bright that it would briefly blind people for hundreds of miles. A massive fireball with core temperatures running at millions of degrees would immediately erupt. Everyone and everything within 100 feet of the blast would be completely annihilated. A 1-mile radius would be charred, and a 500-mile-an-hour pressure wave would expand out, destroying everything in its path. And all of this would happen within a few seconds of the blast. Radioactive particle dust would be spread and scattered all over the city. People exposed to this dust would suffer from acute radiation syndrome, showing early symptoms such as dizziness, nausea, headaches, and vomiting.
I gotta say, like, there is no, like, the horror of this all is, it's horrific. Like, the scale of killing that these weapons are capable of is absolutely insane. But just the radiation is such a, like, dirty fucking aftertaste to have on something so horrific and awful. It's like, oh, so we killed like a ton of your people in just the most violent way possible, and enjoy slow death. Also, you get slow death.
In a matter of hours, this would be followed by symptoms such as fever, seizures, diarrhea, hair loss, and bleeding in the mouth and under the skin. Victims may also experience more severe symptoms over the next couple of weeks, and most of these people would eventually die. An electromagnetic pulse generated along with the blast would disable electronic devices such as computers, cell phones, and communication towers up to several miles away. If more attacks are carried out, the sheer amount of smoke would block sunlight and plunge the global temperature by several degrees for years, leading to a phenomenon called nuclear winter. This may affect crops and lead to a famine. So I think we can all agree we have to say thanks to Petrov for helping us all avoid such an outcome. After the nuclear missile incident was avoided, at first, Petrov was initially praised for his calm while facing an unprecedented and critical situation. But soon after this, he was investigated over the incident. Among the questions he was asked during his interrogation was, why had he failed to record everything in his logbook? To this, he famously replied that he had a phone in one hand and an intercom in the other, and didn't have a third hand. He was let go with a reprimand. According to Petrov, it was just a matter of pride because he had found multiple bugs in the early warning systems, and because of this, it would become unfavorable for his employers to reward him. It may also be why his story isn't widely known. Petrov was long forgotten after the incident and was reduced to growing potatoes for a living. In fact, almost nobody on Earth knew about their almost destruction until 1998, when a retired commander of Soviet missile defense, Yuri V. Votinstev, had his memoir published. In the memoir, he told this story, and that was the first time that this became public.
Oh, wow.
And from this point, the world finally recognized what Petrov had done and lauded him for his role in averting the Third World War.
Hell yeah, dude.
In 2006, he received an award from the Association of World Citizens in the United States. In 2013, he was honored with the Dresden Peace Prize. And in 2014, a Danish documentary called The Man Who Saved the World was made about him. Petrov died at the age of 77 on May 19, 2017, in a Moscow suburb where he lived alone on a small pension. It is a very humble end to a man who was so pivotal to world history. Again, without him, we might not be here. And I just find this story fascinating. The story of how one person changed the course of history and potentially saved millions upon millions of lives.
It's insane.
By essentially
It's absolutely
deciding
crazy.
To do nothing. But let's take this opportunity
And
to
I mean,
collectively remind.
And I mean, the point is that there's not many human beings in the world that have their fingers on buttons like that, right? There are not a lot of jobs in which if you push a button, you can just completely unleash nuclear devastation. However, computationally, those tools are becoming more and more dangerous, more and more disruptive, and are significantly increasing the capacity of just everyday individuals to fuck the world up. We are, guys, going to do a quick little gear shift. Kirk's Gazalt just came out with a new video that I think would be really fun to watch. And then we're going to wrap it. We've been going for a couple hours here. It's been a fun little impromptu tech talk talking about cyber warfare, conflict, and all that fun stuff. Want to leave it on a positive note, or at least a lighter note, I should say, after all of this doom and gloom. So let's see what Kirk's Result has to say about, are there lost alien civilizations in our past? Love these guys. They make the best content. Many tech talks are based off of us watching these videos, so mad respect, and check them out if you guys haven't seen them before.
When we think about alien civilizations, we tend to look into the vastness of space, to faraway planets. But there is another incredibly vast dimension that we might be giving too little thought to: time. Could it be that over the last hundreds of millions of years, other civilizations existed on Earth? Indigenous technological species that rose and died out, and that they or their artifacts are buried beneath our feet. What does science have to say about this, and what are the implications for us? Life on Earth has existed for 4 billion years, mostly as single-celled organisms, until some 540 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion heralded the age of animals. A huge time window for our indigenous aliens. Where would we look for them, and what could we hope to find? Sadly, we have only one civilization to look at: ourselves. Anatomically modern humans emerged around 300,000 years ago and probably lived in small groups of hunter-gatherers, slowly spreading around the world. Progress was slow and our lifestyle didn't change much, although there may have been local bursts of complexity. Until about 10,000 years ago, when the agricultural revolution changed our lifestyle forever, enabling massive population growth and technological progress. Rather than just animals with culture and tools that would have been invisible from space, we changed the face of the planet, cleared forests and constructed cities and temples for our gods at breathtaking speeds and scales. Until, about 300 years ago, we became an industrial species, and yet again our numbers grew exponentially, as did our impact on the planet. We could say that our 300,000-year-long history has 3 phases. We were hunter-gatherers for 97%, farmers for 2.9%, and industrialists for 0.1%.
It's wild when you put that into context.
Yet,
that's fucked.
We are super new on
Holy
Earth.
shit.
On geological timescales, even the sturdiest things lose their durability. The oldest large-scale surface is the Negev Desert, a meager 1.8 million years old. Everything older has been crushed to dust or turned over, and it's either below the ground or covered by ice or ocean.
It's wild, man.
Our age, the Anthropocene, will be a layer only a few centimeters thick in a few million years. If there were aliens before us and they too went through these 3 phases, what would remain of them? What can we learn about indigenous aliens by looking at ourselves? Hunter-gatherer aliens. We actually know that in the last few million years there were hunter-gatherer aliens. Our ancestors like Homo erectus and cousins like the Neanderthals or Denisovans, and probably many more that we haven't found yet or are lost to time forever. They left fragments of their bodies, of weapons and tools, and even art. Considering how long they existed and how little remains of them, although they lived not that far from our present, it's easy to think there have been others. Intelligent animals like us that could talk and use tools and fire, that had culture and art. For the last 2 million years, most hominins lived as hunter-gatherers. So if these aliens never moved up higher on the tech tree, hundreds of different species and cultures could have existed without leaving any traces.
Interesting.
Their artifacts lost to biological and then geological processes. At worst, they would leave absolutely nothing to be found after thousands of years. But what about fossils? We talked about how unlikely the process of fossilization is in more detail in our dinosaur video, but in a nutshell, per 100,000 years of Earth's history, we only get a handful of good fossils. So we might easily just miss fossils of such people, but even if we had any, we wouldn't necessarily be able to identify them as hunter-gatherers. Agricultural and empire aliens. Looking at humans again, agricultural societies left much more to be dug up and found because they used more sophisticated tools made from sturdy...
There's definitely a point to be made there in terms of just there's an enormous amount of information that is lost and just like inaccessible to us, right? And so when we find things like hieroglyphics in Egypt and stuff, obviously I think there's certain like inferences for sure that we can make from that and make certain assumptions. However, I would agree that there's like an enormous amount of richness and context of those cultures that is undoubtedly lost as a result of not having not just like a perfect preservation of their texts or their material possessions, but just, like their way of being just gone with the wind, right? It's kind of impossible to extract that and to really know. So I would say we have to be careful about the assumptions that we make, right? And even even just our understanding of how humans had like sort of homeostasis with nature, how long that took. Maybe there were many elastic periods in which humans were almost obliterated and just a couple survived, and that's why we have the adaptation. I'm not a biologist, I don't know, but I would say there's probably a lot of room for imagination. Let's put it that. I think that's a fair way to put it, for sure.
Materials and had to feed millions, leaving many more artifacts. Farming allowed them to specialize and develop tech from writing to navigation, architecture, and government. Over thousands of years, city-states became kingdoms and empires, some existing for millennia before they fell. Many of the buildings or monuments they constructed are still around, and traces of them will exist for a few thousand more years. Some only as outlines in the ground, but still recognizable to future archaeologists. The pyramids are piles of limestone so massive that they will probably be around for hundreds of thousands of years. And because of the greater numbers of humans that lived during our farm and empire period, we can expect way more fossils and artifacts to be detectable, maybe for a few million years before they vanish. So we can say with confidence that no such indigenous alien civilization existed in the last few million years, because otherwise we would have found something that they left. This still leaves a window of hundreds of millions of years, back to the emergence of complex life where we wouldn't be able to tell. If there were alien pre-industrial societies and empires on the level of the ancient Romans or Chinese, they would have likely disappeared without a trace. Their tools, even advanced metals, would have rotted away. If they dug up canals, cleared forests, and built cities, their traces would be very hard to distinguish from nature. Maybe there was once an empire of cephalopods occupying impressive cities in swamps and lakes made from wood and stone. Their engineers flooding land to build wet cities, their poets reciting poems in a language of colors. Maybe they never industrialized. Maybe their society was too stable or not inventive enough, or they never got a chance. A single event like an asteroid, an epidemic, or an ice age could just have deleted their civilization, ground up their temples as their soft bodies rotted away. Sadly, we don't have the tiniest amount of evidence for any such civilization. After a few million years at best, their achievements would have dissolved into nothing. Industrial indigenous aliens. What about industrial civilizations like humanity today?
This is a fun
Imagine
thought
humans
experiment. I
died
like
out
this.
suddenly through a pandemic or cosmic rays or something like that. What would remain? Our impact on the planet is orders of magnitude greater than that of our ancestors. The fossil record will show a great extinction of wildlife and an explosion of fossils from human-associated animals like rats, cows, pigs, and chickens. Like the structures of our ancestors, skyscrapers and streets and hard drives will basically crumble into nothingness in a few millennia. But because there were so many humans everywhere, for a few million years after our sudden end, there would be clear hints of our existence. The byproducts of our industrial lifestyle might actually give us away for some hundreds of millions of years. We use massive amounts of artificial fertilizer which redirects Earth's flow of nitrogen that is being deposited in the soil. Mining metals and rare earth elements leaves long-term scars and depletes natural resources. We saturate our oceans with plastics that find their way to the ocean floor and may persist for hundreds of millions of years. There are radioactive elements and their decay, unnatural accumulations of elements that don't exist outside labs or weapons. And of course, in our short industrial history, we have changed the proportion of CO2 in the air by burning massive amounts of fossil fuels, increasing the acidity of the oceans, and so on. We may already have left a mark in the geological record. So far, we have found no traces of an industrial alien civilization. No layers of weird chemicals or displaced elements. No radioactive layer to indicate that once great nations waged nuclear war. We do see mass extinctions and massive shifts in the fossil records, but no evidence that they did not occur naturally. And, ironically, we've hit upon an interesting problem here. If industrial societies stress the ecosystem enough to cause their own extinction, they won't be around that long. But if they become sustainable, their imprint on the geological record may be tiny. If past industrial civilizations were sustainable before they died out, we may have little to no chance of ever knowing about them. In any case, over hundreds of millions of years, these signatures may become very subtle and get overlooked or interpreted as natural. Even if an industrialized alien society existed 200 million years ago and lasted for 100,000 years, 300 times longer than industrial humanity, it still might be easy to miss it in the geological record. In any case, all of this is speculation. In the end, we shouldn't use our imagination to trick ourselves into thinking we know anything about our blind spots. Just assuming a thing happened because we don't have evidence against it is a trap we should avoid. So, for now, if we look at the vastness of time, it seems as devoid of aliens as the vastness of space. Maybe we are alone in this universe and always were. Maybe we'll find traces of others eventually, we don't know. But there is one important takeaway. the continuation of our civilization is not guaranteed, and if we're not careful, we may disappear forever. Let's hope that in a few million years, there isn't another civilization studying our layer in the fossil record.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
It's frustrating to know there are so many things in our past we can't access. At least you can avoid that annoying feeling when it comes to other stuff you're interested in, like your favorite TV shows or movies. You can make this possible by going to nordvpn.com/kurzgesagt.
Pushing the NordVPN ad. I gotta respect the hustle. Highly recommend Kirk's Assault videos. They are really sick. Guys, it has been a slice of a night. I really enjoyed hanging out with you. It's been on a couple hours. It's almost midnight where I'm at. I gotta start packing it in. It's been a long, long day. But for those of you who come around, said hello, stuck around, really appreciate it. Love you guys. Feel free to come back every Tuesday. We're talking about science, technology. Next week, we're talking about black holes. Very excited. Got some really cool content lined up for that one. So if you want to delve into the weird physics of black holes, we're going to be learning and talking and visualizing some really cool stuff. Until then, guys, stay out of trouble. Take care of yourselves. And as I always like to say, keep on looking at the stars.